No problem, thank
Better
you.
if you speak up.
Gotta speak up
Sorry.
there, Don.
Discussion? Hearing none, can I have roll call, please?
Jurdy,
Aye.
Erickson, Briggs,
Aye.
Cavalier,
Aye.
Klatt,
Aye.
Melby.
Aye.
Okay, this brings us to the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to remove anything from the consent agenda? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda? Thank you, Steve. Is there
I'll
a
second.
second by Christie? Thank you. Roll call, please.
Jurdy,
Aye.
Erickson, Briggs,
Aye.
Cavalier,
Aye.
Klatt,
Aye.
Melby.
Aye.
Okay, no public hearings. This brings us to the regular agenda. Ashley.
Yes, Your Honor. Item 8.01 is a resolution to approve Charles Reynolds in his capacity as the city attorney as an employee for the city.
Thank you. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve this
So move,
resolution?
Your Honor. So move, Your Honor.
Got Don. I apologize. I didn't hear you over the.
It's all right.
Is there a second, please?
I'll second it, Your Honor.
Thank you, Clayton. Discussion. Forky, you want to give us a little brief, please?
Sure. What this involves is that as I came to work for the city in a dual capacity as administrator and attorney, the private insurance company or the Minnesota Lawyers Mutual Company indicated they could not provide me malpractice insurance as in that capacity. The contact made through our insurance agent to the League of Minnesota Cities indicated if I was an employee in my capacity as city attorney, that coverage would be provided for any malpractice which I might commit, and hopefully there'll be none. But that would be a way for coverage to occur and to have me covered and have the city covered. And if you pass this resolution, then I will be covered by any insurance in my capacity as city attorney and as city administrator.
Sounds good.
Further discussion.
Is there any more cost involved with this? I guess
No
we've
more
never
cost.
seen anything with this as far as wages or anything.
No more cost.
Further discussion? Hearing,
Is there any repercussions if, say, you retire eventually, for the next individual coming in?
No, the city attorney position would be covered under the Minnesota Lawyers Mutual as it was in the past when I was not employed as a city administrator.
Okay.
And in terms of the city administrator, that position is covered automatically by the League of Minnesota Cities.
Okay.
anyone else? Have a roll call, please.
Jurdy,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Briggs,
Aye.
Cavalier,
Aye.
Klatt,
Aye.
Melby.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Moving on.
Yes, Your Honor. Item 8.02 is a resolution to approve the American Tower / Verizon wireless lease.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So move.
Thank you, Wayne. Is there a second?
Second.
By Clayton, thank you. Discussion. Forky once again, please.
Okay, this is a long time coming. I had the help of Chad with respect to this particular matter. Some time ago, American Tower, who is the power of attorney for Verizon Wireless, approached me to see if they could extend their lease. They do have a lease which runs through March 31st, 2029, and they wanted to extend it for a period of up to 30 years. And I said, well, sure, why not? What are you going to give us? So they offered a cash payment. We negotiated. They're making a one-time cash payment to the city of $25,000. We also have an escalator clause in the lease. It goes up 3% a year. And the third is that if they put any other facilities or partnerships or entities on the tower, we get 10% of that rent. So that's what we negotiated, and I am recommending that we sign this. We've been with these people since 2003, and they at that time had a lease for a few years, and then they had a 2009, a 20-year lease.
Wasn't there a part that you mentioned too about they have to get approved?
Oh, one of the things that is in the requirements is because this tower is located so close to our law enforcement center, that prior to them being able to put any additional entities or devices on the tower, we would run that by our police department to make sure that none of our communications would be impacted in any way by any device that went on the tower. That's in the lease. They understand that. Believe it or not, he said that that's the only one in the United States that has this, and they were willing to agree, and they understood why.
Corky, can I ask, once the lease is up, are they responsible for disassembling the tower and
If
what
the
have you?
lease is up, they are responsible for taking it down, removing it, if that's our wish.
Okay, I just want to make sure the city isn't incurring some type of financial responsibility, and then this cost that we're getting this money is then going to pay to dismantle that at the end.
I don't think they're leaving.
Okay.
I think the reason they want an extension is that the communications that Verizon has in competition with others is that this is only going to expand.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Corky. Further discussion? Hearing none, can I have roll call, please?
Jurdy,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Briggs,
Aye.
Cavalier,
Aye.
Klatt,
Aye.
Melby.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Ashley?
Yes, Your Honor. Item 8.03 is further discussion on the food truck ordinance.
Okay, this is discussion only, once again, so there'll be no action taken by council tonight. So I think we'll have Corky start us off here.
Sure, I'd be glad to, Your Honor. Ashley and I, along with citizens, have been attempting to hone our mobile food unit, as they call them, ordinance. We do have one that is applicable, but we're attempting to more laser focus that with respect to mobile food units. Our charge from the last council meeting was to try to establish a proposed fee schedule for licenses here in the city. We have put for your consideration just suggestions. A daily license would be $50, a weekly or a 5-day period would be $200, and a seasonal, a 90-day period would be $500. Again, it is not a recommendation, it is something for your discussion. I do want to let you know that I have spoken with 2 brick and mortar facilities here in our town. One of them was not able to be present tonight, but indicated it would contact me in the future. The other is from Colleen Barta, who manages Taco John's, and she has these comments, which I will read to you. Regarding the fees, the proposed fees, especially for major events, seem very low. Food trucks generally come in when the business climate allows them to operate at a better than average profit margin when compared with brick and mortar. Perhaps there should be different fees based on the size of the event. If a seasonal fee allows a mobile food unit to conduct business for 90 days, the fee should be much greater than $500. And then she said, with respect to section 6 of the proposed ordinance, what is the reasoning behind number 5 and number 6 being exempt from licensing? If a mobile food unit is operating for profit, it seems they should be subject to the same fees as any other mobile food unit. And number 5 and 6, just so you know, relate to 5 is the location, indicating that a mobile food unit should be at a minimum distance 150 feet from any brick and mortar building. And if it operates less than that, it must have a signed consent from such a brick and mortar establishment. In addition, the provision shall not apply to mobile food units operating by invitation of an organization which has obtained a special event permit approved by the Crookston City Council. Obvious reference would be Ox Cart Days. So for consideration, You know, should there be some kind of different provision, or should the mobile food units not be required to have a license for that, or should it be required to have a license? And then 10 feet from buildings, that kind of thing. Section 6 that Ms. Barta refers to is the exempt persons and organizations. In the proposed ordinance, there are some exceptions or exemptions for requiring a license. An organization associated with a public or private school or a youth activity, such as scouts, church groups, athletic leagues located in the school district. That's certainly a point of discussion. You want to think about that. Should we exempt that? The second, I don't think you're going to have much problem with this, children conducting a neighborhood lemonade stand or a similar type parent approved on their property. We did in fact have one call from a young gentleman asking if he could sell his lemonade at the Five Corners. I immediately went there, but he wasn't there, so I couldn't buy anything. Farmers or others selling homegrown produce. Any nonprofit organization or government entity that has a current tax exempt status from either the state or local or federal government and can provide immediate evidence of that status. A mobile food unit that is operating by invitation of a person or organization who has obtained a special event permit approved by the city council. We really don't have that right now, but it's a proposal. Talk about it.
So, sorry to interrupt,
No,
but,
no.
and that, what you just mentioned, so if like for the Ox Cart Days, if they're being invited by the Ox Cart Days, they would be exempt from, is that correct?
Okay, two things. One, if we have such a special exemption in our ordinances, and if they were invited, then yes. Again, we are not necessarily recommending this,
Right.
it's for your consideration. Another thought on that is if an organization such as Ox Cart Days is inviting mobile food units, we, through Ox Cart Days in the city, is providing them a ready-made audience. We have between 1,500 and 2,000 people at various sites, so they are, although not guaranteed, they have audiences there to make a profit. So you want it, why would we make an exception? But it's for thought, for consideration.
Corky, I have a question
Yes.
on the proposed fees.
Yes.
Did you check with other cities that have daily food trucks, and what were they charging? I was approached one here the other day that a couple of cities are charging $20 daily instead of $50 for that. They didn't say weekly or seasonal, but that's what they started charging them for daily
We
licenses.
did, Councilman, we did contact a number of cities, and the daily permits ranged from $20 to $100. And they ran the whole gamut from 20 to 30 to 50. Why we selected for your consideration the $50 is Ashley and I did an hourly wage comparison to how much time it would take the people involved. We have Ashley's involved, and she typically is an hour of time. Then there is contact with the people at the law enforcement center. Their clerical staff takes up to a half an hour, and then the police chief is involved with doing the actual search. And when we looked at it, when we added those hourly rates and the time involved, it came to like $46 and something.
50 cents.
So we rounded it up to $50.
So this kind of goes back to my point of when we're discussing the budgets. Our city, come this next year, is going to probably be incurring a larger levy than anybody would like. I am not opposed to raising fees at this point right now, to the point of being, I don't want to squash business coming in if that's the case, but I don't want to also give a free ride either.
And Ashley and I, Ashley's the city clerk,
Yep,
we talked about that, and we were very cognizant of your thoughts as well as other council members about fee generation. We also, when we talked with the people who came in, they were fully expecting a fee, and they fully understood that one would be assessed. It was always a question of how much. And once they were explained, I think it's fair to say everyone said, we get it, we might disagree with the amount, we might disagree with the 14-day period under our present ordinance, but they said that they regularly are assessed fees in other jurisdictions.
So the top end fee was what?
What's that?
What was the top end fee that people, cities were?
The largest one I saw was Detroit Lakes that had a $250 annual fee plus $36 for every day you were there.
So we, when we were on our summer trips, we were, my wife was down in Yankton, South Dakota, and she had a friend that ran a food truck, and Yankton, South Dakota charges $650 for the permit and $35 a day for a food truck.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's the very high end of what I've ever seen. So, I mean, but granted, they probably have a lot of stuff going on there all summer long. It's probably very advantageous for a food truck to be there. That's why it's so much, but it's all over the place, so.
I think it's somewhat relative too, and I do wonder, towns that are charging $20, like what their population is versus, something that's more comparable to our size city. I think that also should be taken into consideration in the draw, right?
Generally speaking, Councilwoman, the smaller populations have the smaller fee.
Yeah. That makes
Again,
sense.
it's a combination of population, locale, destination. Certainly Detroit Lakes is different than Crookston,
Yeah.
so we get that. Ada is different than Crookston. So we tried to, in setting these numbers, again, not a recommendation, but discussion, take those factors into consideration for you to think about.
Couple areas of concern that I have is, I just want to make sure we don't do anything to adversely affect the ox cart days. So that is something that, I want to make sure whatever we do with this ordinance, it has little impact on the ox cart days. If there's some kind of caveat we could put in there, that would make the people organizing the ox cart days, make them comfortable with what we're doing. I'd like to see that as well, I guess.
I wouldn't have a problem with an exemption for this year since it is so close and that their budgeting is been done already. But I'd also like to see us going forward in the next year, think about, like a 1 to 5 food trucks for an event. Is this cost 6 to 10 or what have you? But I don't necessarily agree that they should be exempt. But I also don't think that it should be maybe as severe of a cost if there's multiple food trucks that are coming in. Because we also don't want to inhibit those individuals from wanting to participate at ox cart days or crazy days or whatever happens to be the case. So I think that should be taken into consideration. And I know that Libby had come forward a couple of weeks ago sharing that they didn't have a problem with like a more of a set fee. But I also want to make sure that we're cognizant of not like throwing something at them this year and allowing them to have a full year to understand that as they go forward and are planning out that event, that there is this cost, whether it's, incurred by the food truck or by the actual event. I think that would be up to them, but at least they have that time to make that decision.
Well, I was going to talk about that in my report, but I can address that now. I did in fact meet with Libby Boucher, the head of the Ox Cart Day Committee this week, and we arrived at an arrangement that was acceptable to her and I think the committee, and that was she anticipated 10 food trucks. So we would assess, or they would pay the city of Crookston $500 for those 10. But they would be given credit of $50 a food truck for any of those food trucks that were previously and continued to be licensed. And it's my understanding that there are 2 or 3 who are now licensed and would be licensed for that event. So there would be a deduction of 3 times $150. Very acceptable to them, very understandable. And as I indicated to Libby, I said, what you have here is if a food truck says they can't pay $100, their profit margin is $100. Otherwise, they're making money. So we talked about that. If a food truck tells you you can't come to Oxcart Days, with 2,000 people milling around and figuring a fourth to a half of them are gonna buy food, you're not making money if you can't pay $100.
Yeah.
And she said, well, I haven't really thought about that, but you're being invited to an event that has a ready base. So we had a good discussion, and we arrived at that format for Oxcart Days this year.
But they are still making application, meaning they'll have the state.
Right, and as the city clerk is telling me, we still have the requirement that the state must license them, must approve them. We can waive the fee, but state statute says they have to have a license. So they gotta have a license, and if we don't charge them a fee, fine, but they gotta have that state license. That's not our call.
Right, I
That's the state's call.
And
Right.
background
And
check.
we're not gonna go and do something that doesn't require that. So the Oxcart Day Committee, Lee Boucher has indicated, she will supply to our city clerk all of the necessary materials to obtain documentation of the license and either the not having to pay the fee, or she will help us get them to pay the fee. Does that answer your questions? And then going forward, we'll have to decide, should there be an exception or exemption? And that's for a later time, unless you want to talk about it
And how
now.
about the night to unite too? I mean, they get food trucks down there, we have to kind of
Yes.
get that blended into the same
But it's
thing.
not the
Yes, I
nonprofit.
spoke to the chief of police, who is in charge of that, and also his lieutenant, and we applied basically the same rule. Your people have to be licensed, but if they already have their license, again, no fee. And I did some more digging in our ordinance, and in fact, our ordinance presently says there should be no license required of a charitable, religious, patriotic, or philanthropic, purposeful organization. It's my understanding that there will be 5 food trucks at Night to Unite. 3 of them are licensed and will be so on August 2nd. One of them is the Knights of Columbus, and I've done research. They are a philanthropic, charitable, religious organization. So I conveyed to the mayor that that organization would not be required to have a license. The remaining one is a one-time participant, and an anonymous citizen has agreed to pay their license fee. So we're covered.
Sounds good.
Other questions?
Porky, can I just clarify the state statute about the 21 days? Is it 21 days that they can only be in a certain location, but they can be in multiple locations in a town every 21 days? Is that the understanding?
That's my understanding of statute. That's what I've conveyed to all licensees.
Okay.
Our ordinance is you have to renew every 14 days. You can be in one location under state statute in a community at the most. Now, the state statute, of course, the legislatures in their infinite wisdom did not tell us what location meant. So to those who have been involved in our community, we've spoken of it, we've talked about it. They have examples of how you move about. But yes, you can be in Crookston every 21 days in, 30 different times.
Okay.
But they had to be different locations. And we have made an arrangement with one or more of the entities in our town addressing that very issue.
Our current ordinance.
Yeah, that's our current ordinance.
Yeah.
How you want to deal with that in the future, that's, again, for your discretion.
I'd still like to look at it, we're at 100, now we're at 50. I agree with Elaine. I mean, if you're making, it's cost the city $46, there's gotta be some incentive for, we have a lot of work to do with this, and I know we backed on the background checks, we backed down on that. But at the end of the day, the labor and time that goes into these things, I think $50, we can hardly pay our costs on that. Everything's going up, and, I think $75 for a daily when they come in here. I mean, I go to them all the time, and there's a lineup on most of them, so they gotta be doing all right. I mean, nobody wants to pay big fees, but at the end of the day, we can't do it for free either, all the legwork on it, and I don't wanna make a ton of money off of it, at least pay our bills with it.
Right, and I tried to do some calculations, Councilman, and like I said, if you can't pay $100, that's your profit margin. You're telling me you're making zero, you can't pay $100. I don't audit their books, but for heaven's sakes, if an average price meal is $10 to $15, you're selling 6 to 8 meals, you're covering $100, and that is the way I looked at it in trying to assess how we look at this particular thing. But that again is up to you. We have to. It wouldn't be in our ordinance. Understand that we would not put the fee in our ordinance because if we ever change the fee, we have to amend the ordinance.
Right.
We put it in our fee schedule, which was much more readily amendable and able to be dealt with. I don't think there's any magic number. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. But Ashley and I wanted to give you enough information so you could look at this rationally and logically when you make those types of decisions.
I would agree. I think that we need to at least cover our cost, but I don't think we need to be really making a profit off of this. And my understanding of this initially too was that this was really for the safety of our citizens. And I know that it's not currently stated about the background checks, and so I'd like to see that as part of the ordinance ultimately.
And we will ultimately do that. As I've read through articles and materials and had discussions, it appears that most practices have a background check on the owner or owners only. To try to do background checks on potential workers is very difficult. They don't always, food truck owners don't always have the same workers. You would hope they do. But, and they may not know at the time they apply for their license who that worker is going to be. So I would make that recommendation that the owner or owners be the subject of background check.
I guess I don't necessarily agree or disagree, but I'm just gonna throw it out there for thought. I could own a food truck, and then I could hire somebody to say, hey, okay, it's your job to go around to these towns, make me some money off it, you're gonna get X%. So this guy that I hire could be a high-risk sex offender, let's just say, and you're doing a background check on me, and I'm sending out in the community this guy that's probably shouldn't be in front of kids.
And that's certainly your prerogative. That's a part of the discussion here. The practicalities of that, as you might know, Councilman, it can be difficult because you don't know who's showing, you don't know if that's the person. It's difficult, but
I get that, and I get the, also I think that we need to be as safe as possible with this and understand the practicalities of that. I do wonder if there is something that would be in the application that maybe it is upon the owners that they are hiring people or people who are working for them, they know that there is no felonies or of anything that would be within the stipulation of our concern, because this is a transient piece, right? So people are moving all around. And if we're ultimately justifying this ordinance for the safety of our community, we should have some way of addressing that. If not having background checks done for all workers, but to have something that says that the owner is aware of any transgressions or what have you with their workers.
Your Honor, I think that an owner is going to take that discretion on himself. He will possibly do a little bit of a check, not a full background check, but the people that you're dealing with, you've got their numbers, you got who's doing what. I think you offer them at least the intelligence to hire decent staff. And it's hard to get staff, I understand that, but I mean, it's just there's a lot of common sense around here. And they're hiring them sometimes for 1, 2, 3 days. And then to have them make a $50 background check for, kids like that or adults like that, it's tough. I think it's one of those things that he is to be held accountable if something's wrong with his stand. I mean, they're not gonna have certifications for food serve, but the owner does, you know what I mean? And that's how they get certified with the state. So there's certain things where you've got to just allow for the common sense and a good operator to make their decisions on that, I believe.
No, and the one that I got the phone call on, he was just like, I don't know, Darren, do we have different levels of background checks? Because they went back to medical, they go pretty in depth where, we don't need that information. To me, it's way over the top for anybody. I mean, we're not, there are just extreme levels of in-depth information that we shouldn't know. I mean, their medical history, their, bankruptcies or whatever in the past, and I just think that's kind of over the top on that.
So we're limited on the depth of background that we can perform on employees that we hire, whether they're seasonal, full-time, and it would be the same for the vendor food trucks. So per state, there's only certain codes or certain ways that we can do that background. So we're not gonna be able to, we're gonna not find medical information or anything like that. We're just gonna find whether they're a felon or not, and like a predatory offender. But other than that, and that information is not retained past or further than the application. So it's not in depth that way as far as medical records or anything like that.
So, if you don't mind, as a police chief, what are your thoughts? Would you like to see background checks on, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I mean, I just like your opinion on your thoughts. I mean, would just the owner work for you, or would you like to see every employee in the food truck?
I'm good either way. Like Corky said, sometimes the logistics of trying to do each employee could be difficult. I agree with both sides of the argument. When local businesses, if we're doing background checks or any kind of reference to them, it would be to the owners, not the employees. So I think that it's fair to say, to leave that back with the owners, to hopefully that they're hiring, good quality people. But I also understand the argument of exactly like you stated. So I'm good either way, but it's a difficult decision, that's for sure.
The other thing with that is I know, even Fertile Fair, I mean, they had young kids in there. I mean, 90% of the staff on those food trucks are 16, 17 years old. I mean, that's to go through a background check on a teenager would be a total, I don't know, it'd be over the top, I think, do some of these have older people? Yeah, but the ones that have been in town, there's a few strays here and there, but for the most part, they're back every year. And I just think it should be up to the individual that owns a truck to do his due diligence more than us digging in everybody's.
I guess through the experiences that I've had with, say, having the taxi service, every driver had to go through a background check. I can understand that. You're in a car, you're in a different situation. When you're out here at a food truck, it doesn't offer that type of one-on-one, so to speak, or anything. And I think there's a lot more visibility there. So I think for the short time, it would be overkill in my theory. And like I say, putting the onus on the owners or the folks that are in charge there should be good enough for most of us. Not gonna say it's never gonna happen, but if it does, it'll get taken care of. That's part of the fee too, is with police and fire and all that. So there's certain things that you get for this, and if you went to every convenience store in town, you're gonna lose a lot of help. And if you go to every manufacturer, you're gonna lose a lot of help. So some things are just, let the employer take care of that burden.
I think, I'm not saying I go to a lot of food trucks, but, over the years, the ones I've gone to, I just feel that 9 times out of 10, they're you know, it's a family business. The owners have their kids working it, or they have friends of the kids, or nieces or nephews that are helping out for a summer gig with these things. I don't know if we're overreaching or not. I get everybody's point on this, but
Like the guy told me, he says, if the fair's coming in town, do you do a background check on every carny?
well, exactly.
It is what it is. but
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there. It'd be tough to do, and, you know, and like Wayne says, just leave it up to the businesses, and it's on them, because we don't require background checks for every employee that has a business in town, so I agree with that side as well.
And we
Chief
do
Selzer.
have coverage, we do have insurance coverage now, whether it covers the acts you all were talking about, I'm not sure, but there is that as well.
Chief Selzer, have you had any complaints about food trucks and employees in the past? Sorry.
So your question was if we had any complaints on any food vendors in the past, and it's, I'm sorry,
The employees.
the employees, no, we haven't. And, you know, just on your question too on sex offenders, depending on the level of sex offense that you're given once you're released back into the public, they would be required, again, depending on the level of what you're assigned when you're released, you know, level 1 through 3, 3 being the worst, 1 being the least of the 3, if you want to say that. They would be required to notify law enforcement or their probation officer of going to different cities or staying at a certain place for more than a certain days at a time. Now, that might not be applicable to every time, you know, 1 day at a time, but if they're leaving the city which they live, going to work for somewhere for more than 7 days, things like that, we have to be notified. So there are some restrictions even to that, which could, you know, help if that makes it a little easier if we're doing it just on the owners versus employees.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I think that both owners of food trucks, if I was an owner, I would want to make sure that I had an employee, a good employee, and I think it should be on, let the owner of the food truck take care of that part of checking out their own employees, not us.
Sounds good.
so the purpose of the fees then, are we comfortable with them, or?
I mean, just for my,
I would say
I would
yes.
like to, I would say $100.
For,
Daily?
Yeah.
I'd rather see 50, the proposed states here.
I would agree. I think that we're trying to cover our cost. I don't think that we're trying to profit off of this. I just have a hard time, especially with maybe some of the smaller food vendors or those who do come in for multiple days. I don't want us to get to the point where it's not cost effective for people to come, or that they'll avoid us to go to somewhere else that's only charging them $20 per day. So I don't know, don't know if I feel comfortable with 100 for that reason, especially because I don't know if we could really justify it. I mean, justifiable for 50 because there's a cost involved, and that's
Well,
where we're at.
I think that,
Councilwoman, I think you can justify any fee you want.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, based on what we've already discussed and what the cost is, that's why I'm suggesting that.
The only other thing, we still gotta watch out for the brick and mortars, they pay taxes here, they're here year round. And, you know, when a business closes because they had too much food or vendors, I mean, you know, they're only here seasonal, you know, we can eat there whenever, if they're gone from a brick and mortar standpoint, they're gone. And I just, you know, I think, you know, $75, $100, whatever, you know, I just look at the businesses that sell food that pay taxes in this town pay a heck of a lot more than that. I mean, and those are the ones that are available year round, and,
well, there's somebody that wants
I
to.
just, you know, I just think we gotta look out for both sides of that too, we can't just let this go.
I agree. I think there's a happy medium, but I agree with both Steve and Christie. I mean, there's probably a happy medium, but I just don't think we should be bashful about charging some of this stuff.
we have, someone with a food truck, would you please come up, and love to hear from you. We need, first and last name and address, please.
Yeah, my name is Megan Siddiqui. I'm at 107 West 2nd Street. I bought the old chamber building, so just speaking out of owning commercial property, I pay $1,200 a year for property taxes. I've been paying $100 every 2 weeks for a permit. So that would be, if a person could run full year, that's double what I'm paying for property taxes. So, just to throw that out there, like, let's be fair, I think. And then I guess I have a question on the current, what we're doing right now. I have to apply for a permit every 14 days. The trucks from out of town are allowed to have an open permit, but theirs don't have to be 14 consecutive days. Out of my last permit, I used 5 of the 14 days. So I'm wondering, I just want full disclosure on how this is actually supposed to work for people who come from out of town, that they're open, their permit's open for 14 days. Mine is only good for 2 weeks because I'm from town. Or how do I keep mine open so I get my full 14 days out of the permit?
You can absolutely do that. You need to provide us your schedule. When you're gonna be here, when you're not gonna be here. So if you say, I got a 14-day permit, these are the 14 days I want,
Okay.
I will not be there otherwise, perfectly fine.
Because on the permit, on the current permit, it says must be maximum 14 consecutive
And
days.
you
So
know,
that's what
we have discussed this. We are amenable to talking about that.
Okay.
You just have to come and tell us. No question about it. If you say, I'm here June 1st, 8th, 12th, we can come get the 14 days.
Sure.
And if you're gonna be gone, then you gotta be gone.
Yeah.
Not in the spot.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay, so like I applied for one today, and I just put a question mark for the end date because I don't know what 14,
Then you need to, it's incumbent on you to come in and say, these are the 14 days I'm gonna be here.
okay,
Because you've booked your food truck, I assume, at other locations. You will know when you'll be here and when you'll be gone.
and then also about the 8 PM curfew for, like, we had to turn down New Flyer for supper because they ran past 8 PM. I'm really hoping that can get amended too for like when they're having an employee meal or something, that we don't have to turn people down because their suppers run past 8 PM.
And that certainly is something that I have researched in other communities, and I will make a recommendation that it be later than that,
Okay, okay,
but that's in our ordinance, as you know.
awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess adding that would be a piece of it too, that's not on here. I see that we have, in compliance with the noise ordinance, but we don't actually have like a timeframe. So
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
we just make sure that that is in the final, is the clarification for the end time.
Oh, for sure.
When would
Yes.
you like the end time?
And do
to
you
be?
have a thought? My thought is that 10 o'clock in the summer, because one, that's kind of when it gets a little bit dark in the summer.
Yep.
Two, you do have some shift changes at our various places, and they do wish to have food trucks. Sometimes that's 8, sometimes that's 9, sometimes they have breaks during their shifts if they're working graveyard or swing shift. I would recommend 10 o'clock, but that's a recommendation.
That sounds good.
Corky, for the noise ordinance, because I don't have it off the top of my head, is there a certain time frame for noise being quieter in the evenings? Is there like a cutoff or a time that someone could make a justification, or maybe?
Well, I think we do have an ordinance as far as noise.
Yeah, we do. I'm just wondering if there was like a time frame, if like,
I'm not aware of a time frame. I'm aware of like decibels and that kind
Sure.
of thing. That's consistent throughout the 24-hour period. I'm not
so it's
aware of
based on
any.
decibels and not on time? Okay.
Not that I'm aware of. I don't have the code memorized,
Yeah.
but I'm not aware of a time frame.
Okay.
So Chrissy, is what you're talking about, the mobile food truck units shall not make sounds or announcements to call attention to the food truck? Is that the one that you're talking about?
Yeah, I was just wondering about the noise ordinance, if there was like a time frame on that, just
Well-
because if we're gonna decide on a time that they could be open until, I wanted to make sure that it was
So I was
like,
gonna, does this adversely affect the ice cream guy that goes around with his music coming from him? Because I don't want to stop that.
Arguably, it does, and we can address that issue. It's not critical, but just understand, if we start trying to carve out exceptions and this and that,
Yeah.
that's how the Roman Empire collapsed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
They
get it.
codified everything. We have to use reason and judgment and hope that the vendors in town also use some reason and judgment.
Well, then, if that is the case, can individual exceptions be granted, whether it's outside the norms of the ordinance? I mean, can an exception be granted at any time? Maybe comes to the council and say, hey, I understand there's an ordinance here but can I have an ice cream truck that goes around town and plays my music?
I don't think you can do that.
Yeah.
I don't think you can do that, Councilman. That'd be like somebody coming to Crookston and saying, I gotta get to East Grand Forks really fast. Can I go 90 through your
Well,
town?
okay.
Yeah.
So that, I don't like option 4, section 4 then. I'd rather not have that then at
Fair
all.
enough.
Seems like, yeah, we're a little deep on some things in that. I mean, if we read through it, some make total sense and some are total gray area. So it's one of those things that we need to get rid of the gray area, ones that are gonna really be an issue for things that, people want. I mean, people love the ice cream truck, and we gotta go out of our way to figure out how we can get the ice cream truck.
And again, it's a mere suggestion,
Right.
but we could craft the ordinance that says may not make noise that is unassociated with their business, or it may not make noise that violates the noise ordinance, that we can work with that.
Okay.
I get what you're saying. I just hope you all understand, we want to make this something that is pliable and able to be looked at in a very reasonable, common sense kind of, and there's always going to be, everyone wants an exception. When I was prosecuting crimes in the city of Crookston, I had some hardliners come in and this guy ought to go to jail for 90 days. Great. 2 weeks later, it's his son.
Yeah.
Oh, he doesn't need to go to,
Yeah.
we want to be reasonable. We want
Well,
to try to work this through.
And if we're making exceptions, obviously that part of the ordinance isn't working right. So we need to
Exactly.
really consider that as well. One of the other ones that I was kind of curious about was the mobile orders left unattended or stored on site is not, while it's not underway. I do wonder if that could be crafted a little bit differently, because I can understand and I think about like Ufta comes off the top of my head.
Well,
that they-
Oxnard Days is a prime example if they're staying overnight.
Right.
They're
So
not gonna
I
be
do wonder if
attended.
it's more of a clarification that they're not to be stored or what have you a day after the event, right? I think if you're there for multiple days, I don't have an issue with a food truck being there during the time frame that they're servicing, but I definitely don't think they should be sitting there for a week after the event or a week before the event. So I think we maybe need to have a little bit better clarification on that one.
I think we can do that they may be stored unattended during the duration of their permit.
Yeah, I think that would be a better way of doing that. I also do wonder about the temporary seating for customers. And I do wonder if maybe we clarify that maybe 3 tables or something of that nature, but I also know that we do have picnic benches that have been put out for different food trucks that have been in town. So I'd like to see us craft that a little bit more clarification, because I think there are a lot of food trucks that have had some type of seating next to their truck. So I don't think that's uncommon outside of our city. So I would like to see maybe a little bit better clarification on that one as well. I don't know if we should completely prohibit it, but I don't think there should be like 25 tables in front of a food truck either.
We actually own those
Right.
curbside things. I mean,
Yeah.
We used to own as a city. I mean,
Yeah.
that's another thing we gotta look at. Or we bought them, we put them together, or they were bought by somebody else, but, we got permits to put them out and from the state and whatever. We had to do the legwork on that, and it was a donation, I believe, and, it'd be nice to be able for anybody to use them that need them, so I mean. So there's so many things in this thing, and between now and January 1st, I would hope we'd have something pretty rock solid, but, going into next year to, hopefully we can have it together and get the bugs out of it, but.
Well, we do have about 6 months. That was the intent. We're going with the ordinance we have for this year.
Yeah.
Trying to interpret that in common sense. And if you do have specific comments about things you'd like to see, let Ashley or myself know, and we'll incorporate them, and we'll be bringing this back on a periodic basis. And I've said that to the brick and mortar people, and I've said that to mobile food vendors that are in our community. If they have comments, let us know. This is not a done process, it's a process in motion at this point.
learning curve for both of us.
So I think also, Corky, then we would want to look at section 6.5, which was the one about by invitation that they would be an exemption, and I don't know if that's necessarily where we wanted to go with that from just the conversation that we've had. Is that correct?
My interpretation of what
Sounds
I
like
heard
it.
tonight is that there would be no exemptions.
Okay. So just double checking on that one.
It would be this.
And then can you give me a little bit more clarification on the exemption for mobile food units that are in conjunction with an auction sale? Is that a common?
It's my understanding anecdotally and from talking to others that auctioneers either themselves maintain food vending during an auction or they bring in someone to conduct that service for them. Because they typically go from early in the morning till well into the late afternoon or early evening, and they offer that as part of their service.
Okay, and so should that be an exemption?
Well, that's up to you guys. It's often done.
Do you want to have an auction?
You want to have
Don't you?
have an auction without a food truck? I dare venture that
That's how it is.
90% of the people would say no.
They travel
They want a food truck there.
Yeah.
They want to eat. And
Right.
the auctioneers want them there because when people have a full stomach, they're happy and then they bid higher.
Right, and I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying, giving them an exception to the cost or
And
the
typically
fee.
they're one, there's one
That's-
food truck.
Yeah.
But, and again, it doesn't have to be, it's what you all decide you want to do. There's arguments, yeah, we can be rock solid and say, if you're a food truck in the city of Crookston, you're paying $100, period. That makes it real easy. Makes it real easy.
I guess my question is really justifying their exemption. Because a lot of these auctioneers are making some pretty good money, right? And if they have a captive audience where they're providing the food, I just want to make sure that we're being fair across the board.
Or we can ask them,
Right.
the auctioneer, if you're coming into town, if you're having a food vending, you pay $100, whether you do it yourself or whether you hire someone.
Yeah, I would just like that to be considered as well.
Okay. I know there's a couple of people here with food trucks. You have any comments you would like to share with us? Or brick and mortar?
Hey there, guys. I'm sure you all remember me from last month. I'm Landon Duckworth. I help run the Lucky Duck food truck, part owner. I run it with my mom here. I just kind of wanted to address Mr. Erickson's concerns with the costs for, background checks in terms of, I wanted to, quote Mr. Melby here with, it might be a little bit overkill. If it's me and my mom who own the Lucky Duck food truck and we come in every 2 weeks to get a background check, it's the same 2 people every 2 weeks. I don't really feel like it might be necessary to do it every 2 weeks. I mean, you guys would know if something major happened with us. I just, overkill might be the right word for it. Just since, I am locally located and operate out of Crookston specifically. That was just my thought that I wanted to address.
And that makes sense. Maybe
Thank
that
you.
should be that,
Yearly or something, I don't know.
yeah, or whatever, yeah.
Okay. Oops, I'm sorry.
Sorry, hi. My name's Cassandra Bernal. I'm here on behalf of Joe's Diner. I don't know if, obviously, we're right across the street, but touching on what Councilman Erickson said about restaurants having to close because of food trucks, I feel like the distance that you have set now is 150 feet away from any brick and mortar. I feel like that's too close still, because we did have to close for the summer to let them succeed, which that's all we want, is for everybody to succeed, but we also need to succeed. But we also need to succeed, to continue to be in the community and be a part of Oxcart Days and donate to, what was it, I'm sorry, CYBA, and be a part of that. And we pay fees, we pay our taxes, we want to be a part of the community, but if you're not leaving us any room to bring people into our establishment, then we really can't, it's really hard. Granted, there is inflation and food costs and everything has gone up, and which we all know that in the grocery store, but we were managing. But then as soon as summer starts, food trucks are able to be within 100, as far as 150 feet. That really kind of killed us for the summer. So now we aren't opening back up until food trucks are gone in the city. And if there's any way that maybe we can talk about having food trucks having to be further away from brick and mortars, or maybe out further, like Walmart parking lot or Hugo's parking lot or something like that, that would be ideally a great plan for us, at least, as, you know, and maybe, you know, Taco John's and Subway, everybody in the area, you had read from Taco John's manager. I feel like everybody would kind of be on the same page with that. We want nothing but success for any food trucks that come to town, but we also want you to please keep in mind that there is people in the community who want to stay in the community year-round.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Shirley Iverson, 129 Mill Street, Crookston, Minnesota. You mentioned Night to Unite and you mentioned Oxcart Days, but one of the community builders that you have is the Downtown Crookston Development Partnership. We are a 501c3 organization, so we are a nonprofit. We're also organized as a 501c6 as a nonprofit, as a community group focused and originated by City Council to energize downtown Crookston. And I guess I want to talk a little bit about the food trucks that we've brought to town. We've had 2 successes, and I know Joe's Diner just got up and talked about it, but, you know, they came as a food truck and, you know, found a very receptive community. Joe is from Crookston, and their first year here, they were just as a food truck. He was able to leave his truck overnight, which again, I know you're going to look at in your ordinance. The other real success that we had was bringing Heroes Coffee to Crookston. They found that they had their most sales ever of any location when they came to Crookston and began to look at bricks and mortar. So while neither of those were successful in the long run, they were incredibly popular. People still talk about Heroes Coffee, still people come in to buy the Heroes Coffee grounds. People like Joe's Diner. The restaurant was successful. I've probably eaten breakfast there more than anyone else in the room. And it was great. It helped to energize downtown. So please think also the food trucks as an opportunity for economic development and for enticing people to see that Crookston might be a good place to have a restaurant. The last thing I would say about the ordinance is that, you know, we actively have brought food trucks for the last 4 years, and I think that it has made your downtown more exciting, and it has made all of our downtown more exciting. Now, I'm not sure how often you drive through downtown, but it's not the hottest spot of Crookston, and there are a lot of people working to make it better. Don Cavalier, representing Ward 4, has committees that are looking at that. DCDP, Downtown Crookston Development Partnership, has had continuous work making it walking trails, making people aware of the historic aspects of our downtown. Just a number of reasons to try to bring people downtown. And the food trucks did that. One summer, we probably served over 6,000 people. Now, when you talk to them, as people do when they ask for feedback, as Dawn has representing the ward, they're saying, you know, they're dirty, they're hot, they're sweaty, they're grabbing a hamburger on the go, they don't want to really go in and order, they're not necessarily bringing their lunch. And you can also see that the food trucks have gained in notoriety for making the employment places in Crookston a better place to work. So why is Riverview motivated to bring in 6 or 7 food trucks a month? I'm sure you know. It's so that their workplace is a preferred workplace. It's because their people have really short breaks and are not coming to your brick and mortar restaurants, but are getting food at the location. I think the same would be during the beet harvest. We have probably over a decade of 24-hour food trucks with Oak Pit Grill, bringing up some old names, who ran 24 hours a day out at Titan. So just some of the things to look at is that it makes Crookston a better place. We have brought in people who invested in our community, And we would like to have you consider that downtown is as important as any other parking lot at the north end of town. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I guess the one point, to bringing that up, Shirley, the one sticking point that I really got hammered on was, okay, Joe's Diner was downtown, brick and mortar, parked right in front of their store, in the front 2 stalls was Lucky Duck Food Truck with a sign on the back, food truck around the corner. I just think,
That was only on a day they were closed. It was a day they were closed, you've never done that, they were open. You were
I'm gonna
supposed
beg to
do that.
differ, but okay, I'll take your word for it. And, you know, and now you're over by Erickson's over there. I thought we had an ordinance you couldn't advertise like that. So that's my question, and I just don't think you can do it. The taxi did that for a while down by Hardee's, the old Hardee's, and they were told they had to take that sign down, and it was on a private lot that Pearson's owned. So I was just wondering how they got that, and that's where a lot of this started, was the mumbling and grumbling started with, I think, outstepping, with your advertising and trying to do that. And I mean, and you had them in you had them in the planters. No, there is a sign ordinance.
There,
So anyway, that's just
Yep, and
what I'm
there-
saying, was the elephant in the room on a lot of this.
right,
stuff.
and we've always had an ordinance on the book regarding peddlers do,
Solicitors, peddlers, and transient merchants.
Yep.
And the issue that is being discussed here will be addressed in the ordinance.
so. Okay, we continue to move on here.
Yeah. Thank you.
We still want to just kind of think about what, maybe in a couple weeks or whatever, or a month, bring it back regarding what you are thinking about.
I think we
Proposed
should
fees.
calendar this for the second meeting in August to bring back what we have adjusted and what we've learned tonight. Ashley and I, along with other city staff, will be looking at this. We'll be talking with Chief Selzler and trying to incorporate what we've gotten out tonight.
Sounds good.
All right, great, thank you. Okay, moving on, we've got reports and, Corky, anything tonight?
Oh, I had a lot to report, but I already reported it, so I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you. We'll start with Jake tonight, anything?
Thank you, Your Honor. Council. Just a quick overview. Our parks crews continue to keep mowing and keeping the town look good. So they're doing a good job. A lot of mowing, a lot of weed whipping. Working at the ball fields, getting them nice. We had a tournament last weekend up there, Legion tournaments. And next week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we are hosting Sub-State, Legion Sub-State. So should be a good time, fun time. I haven't got a schedule yet, but once I do, I'll make sure to post it. So, rec program started back up this week. And also this week's busy too, because Tiffany Biermeyer is taking, activity, pictures. So pictures of all our rec activities and all our teams and stuff like that. So she started that today. Just getting ready for fall and winter programs. They're gonna be right around the corner, so, just planning programs and events with Andrea. We're gonna meet tomorrow, calling old coaches, finding new coaches, volunteers, and believe it or not, I'm starting to schedule the CSC. So that's all I have.
Jake, how's the rollout of the new scheduling system that you have?
The new registration
yep,
system,
yep.
it's working awesome. I mean, we had a few kinks obviously to start with, but it's going well, and I think we can do more with it too. So but what that entails adding more modules, which is more money. But there's other things that we can add to it, maybe possibly in the future. So
Okay, great.
thank you.
Jake, it
Yes.
might be a small group, but I get a lot of calls, what's going on at the pool? It's closed again. Is there
Maybe I can
anybody that?
help you out on that.
I mean, I had 2 of the previous managers call me and ask if you wanted help, if they would be willing to come and look at it. So I'm just wondering, where are we at with that?
I've received emails as well, and those have been forwarded to Jake, the previous people. I met with a group of interested people last week. discussing everything from, do their medical plans cover their payment fee there, to ideas for the pool, to, we even recruited a lifeguard out of that session. Jake was there as well. I'd say we had an hour-plus session with a group of interested people, explained to them, one, the chlorine issue, which was readily explainable, and they accepted that. Also, how we're keeping attendance, when we're keeping attendance, and I think we had a good session, and I think everybody came to a agreement about we're doing everything we can at the pool. Jake, does that pretty well summarize it?
Yeah, last week I spent about 4 hours, maybe 5 hours there. And I talked to, his name is Kent Oslin, he's from Hawkins. We get our chemicals from him. I purchased a new, like feeding monitor that feeds chlorine and acid and stuff to the pool, put a bigger tube on. We sat there and we put some dechlor in there. Our numbers have been off skewed, so he taught us a lot. We worked on it a lot. So now it's fixed. So we're working on it. So it's a work in progress. I think the biggest thing is we don't have Cody back yet, and I did talk to him, and he is planning on coming back. So he's not there all the time. But that's why we had some chemical issues again, and it got out of whack. And it takes time. Once you have that much of water, it takes time to get back. So, all right.
Thanks, Jake. Brandon.
So this week, the water department started water main replacement on Alex between 4th and Eichhoff. So they started that today. The water service leak at the post office is supposed to be fixed on the 13th, so Wednesday. Local road projects are on schedule. Hopefully they'll be blacktopping first, second, Washington, and the end of Eichhoff by the week of the 25th here. The street crew got 1 block of sidewalk replaced downtown. From looking at downtown, we're probably gonna have to do at least 2 more blocks this year just to get rid of a lot of our trip hazards downtown. Wilkins will be working on removing the rest of the clay from the fire hall dike beginning Thursday, I believe. And then tomorrow at 3:30, the community review panel will be meeting for the downtown corridor conversation. And then we'll be they have some projected cost associated with these improvements that will have a special Ways and Means tomorrow at, I believe it's 5:30. And then Christy, you had asked about the final open house. It's most likely going to be at a city council meeting for the final presentation at the end of the day. It's not scheduled yet, but we'll figure that out after these next 2 meetings.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thanks, Brandon. Chad, anything tonight?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, just a few items. The Web Task Force had its training last week, 2 days worth of training, and we are on schedule to go live with the new website on July 27th. And we just closed last Friday our advertising for the new IT technician position, and we will be going through and reviewing applications and making selections for candidates for interview very soon. And that's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ryan.
We did get the award letter from the state for the MIF application for D. They were granted their $190,000 in conjunction with the Job Creation Fund also. So we will be getting the rest of the paperwork started on that. It probably will take a good couple of months until we actually get through that rest of the process with all those paperwork. Still working with Brady Martz, hoping to finish up our audit with them very soon. And Corky and I have been working with other department heads, going through all the budgets.
Thanks, Ryan. Tim?
Thank you, Your Honor, Counsel. Just want to start out by thanking American Crystal for their very generous donation to the Emergency Management Department. That $5,000 will go a long way at improving our sandbagging efforts and some communications down there, so that was extremely nice. Fire department's been working with a lot of the large industries in town, like Husky out there and CHS, working on updating and honing our skills on firefighting efforts at those places. We want to make sure we serve them the best we can. We've been training at their facilities, and they're very, very good about providing us anything that we might need to make our job even a little bit easier. So we'll be working with them, maybe getting some grant funds or something from some of those guys, maybe even some supplies. I know a lot of citizens been waiting for this. We've heard from Homeland Security and Emergency Management today. Of course, in their best wisdom, now they're in a big hurry. We need to start gathering information from private citizens in town that have had some kind of damages from this spring's high water event, whether it was from the snow melt or what have you, the rains. I tried to get as much information from them as I can, but this does include direct flood damage, water touching your buildings or in your properties. It does also include seepage through the walls or floor, and it also does encompass sewer backup. So any of these issues happened at your place, I need to get information from you as soon as possible. This is not for commercial properties, though. They might have a different program down the road for that. To make it a little bit easier, what I need is I want people to email me their name, address, phone number, and type of damage. My email address is tfrober, most people know that, at crookston.mn.us. I can't be inundated with phone calls down to the fire station, is why I'd like them emailed to me. Someone from the fire department, maybe myself, will be contacting you. There's quite a bit of I shouldn't say quite a bit, but there's a few questions we just need to put on our matrix that we got to turn into Homeland Security. So please email me that as soon as you can. Even if you have collected insurances on that. Some groups around town have collected names, and I appreciate that. If your name is on that list, make sure that list gets to me. I have just a few names, and I know there's a few groups that have been collecting that information, but I need those lists sent to me as soon as possible. Even if you think you're on one of those lists, get that to me. People outside of the city limits need to get a hold of the Polk County Emergency Manager. He has staff, which is a lot more staff than I got, but his phone number is 470-8290, and they'll be taking information from people outside of the city limits. I'll take anything inside the city limits. Polk County will be putting out a news release tomorrow. I believe I talked with Jody today. All that information, emails and phone numbers will be on there. But again, if you've had any kind of direct flood damage, seepage, or sewer backup, please contact me by email, tfrober@crookston.mn.us as soon as you can, because it'll be early next week. They're going to be looking for this. So Any questions?
So the press release that's coming out, is that for Polk County or is that for also the city of
Yep,
Crookston?
I talked to Jody, and he's gonna include our information also.
Okay, can we get that pushed out on the social medias as well? And is there a way to actually do like a paper copy that can be at, for those who don't have access or don't?
Yeah, we're gonna try to get that out as
Tech-savvy.
much as we can. He's gonna contact HSCM, Homeland Security, and see if they have a boilerplate thing that they want sent out, so.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna try to get it out. I'll get it to the media outlets as soon as I see it, and, well, that's where he'll be starting anyhow, but I guess I'll get it down to City Hall or Chad, and he can get it out on Facebook or what have you.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
So, Chief Grover, I had sent you the information from the Crookston Area Community Fund. We had 27 households apply for emergency assistance.
Yep.
They had to do an application that included the damages. Would you like to view those? I did send you the overview by email, and you thanked me for sending that. It was over $1 million of those, just those 27 households.
Yep, yeah, if you could make sure I have your most updated list, and that would be outstanding. I know Jess is, maybe you guys worked on that together, I don't know, but I've talked with Jess too, so. No, please get those to me again so we don't, something doesn't fall through the cracks, absolutely. We gotta show that there's a big need up here, which there really is, so. We gotta paint the picture that we've had some damages, issues, and hopefully we can get some funding. Yep, Landon.
You said there would be a different program for commercial property owners, possibly?
Yep, possibly, yep. And if there is, believe me, I'll get that information out ASAP. Okay, anything else?
Thanks,
Thank you.
Tim. Darren, anything tonight?
No report, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. See, we got Commissioner Wilhite, anything tonight?
Just something quick. Just some good news. The commissioners have begun making some decisions on the ARP funding. We have an overabundance of requests for money, but the one project that was approved here in the last couple of weeks was the Crookston Lift Station project, and that will be funded at a full 100%. I think that's close to $138,000. So our attorney will be sending an agreement just to make sure, keep our auditor happy, that you agree to spend that $138,000 on that project, which I'm sure you will. But that should be coming relatively soon. And this is something else. We just learned about this a few months ago, really. The Minnesota counties, along with counties throughout the United States, had a lawsuit against pharmaceutical companies. And they did win that, and it was a massive settlement. I believe the fund that Polk County is going to be receiving is close to $5 million. It's to be spent over a 19-year period, to be front-loaded, okay? So most of that to be spent in the first 6 to 7 years. And Sarah Reese, our public health coordinator, will be coordinating that project and taking a look and soliciting ideas of where those funds can be placed. So more details to come on that. Other than that, any other questions? Very good.
And just so all you council members know, the city did sign on that particular lawsuit. We do not get any direct funding, but we can participate through the county. If that's something that we desire, we can seek funding for programs for that. We do not get any direct money on that.
Thank you. Okay, Wayne, anything tonight?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Christie?
No report, Your Honor.
Thank you. Steve?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Just like to thank the people that came tonight for this discussion, prior discussion. Helps out a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Don?
No report, Your Honor.
Delane?
Just a reminder, Cheetah meeting tomorrow at noon. That's all I have.
Thank you. Just a couple things. I'd like also to thank Bro Chevrolet. They made a donation to our youth, Crookston Youth Sports. And once again, I know Tim mentioned about American Crystal making a donation. Thanks to them. Attended Frank and Jeannie Lindgren's Experienced American last Friday. It was good attendance, good to see Frank, and hasn't changed a bit, so. Just to piggyback too off what Ryan was saying about Minnesota Economic Development, that with manufacturing, the loan they got was $190,000 for purchasing machinery and equipment. This award will also result in creating 24 jobs. If the business achieves all jobs and wage goals by whatever date they have set, the full loan of 190 will be forgiven, so that's good news for D. Just a reminder, we're having a Ways and Means shortly. Nothing else become before council. We are adjourned. Thank you. First one is library budget discussion.
You'll see you've got your revenue sheet is the first sheet. That top line is the taxes. And we left that as it is for right now until we get all the budgets together, and then we'll see where the levy's at. And your second sheet is where we changed a few of the expenses. The main one that we changed was the utilities, allowing for that percent increase. Chris kind of felt that with the changes that they had done at the library with the new lighting and different things, that the utility bills there haven't been real bad, and she's not seeing a large spike like some of the other places have. And then on her CIP for the next year, she has exterior lighting, a new HVAC system, and then starting to reserve for windows. And then that reserve we would carry on through the years, building that reserve until we would have enough to do the windows. Do you guys have any questions for Chris?
I have one question, just even for Ryan, so just to clarify, if utilities start to go up though, that can be adjusted accordingly down the road?
No, once you
Are we just
set
gonna
the
keep it?
budget, that's the number for the year.
Right, but I'm saying going, for the following year, going forward. Like if we find that it's not enough, we can change it, we can up it.
Yeah, next year.
Yep, next year, yep, got it, yep,
Here, you gotta find it somewhere else.
right. Got it, yep.
Chris, $50,000 in 7 years, are those windows gonna make it to 2027? And can you do them for $50,000? That seems way low.
I mean, without actual bids, Councilman Erickson, I'm not 100% sure, to be real honest. But it's a good place to start. I think that if we've made it this far, it's a matter of prioritizing. If we've made it this far with what we've got, I think we can get through. I think that we're limping along a little bit more so on our lighting, exterior lighting, in terms of safety issues and some of the the physical poles and things of that nature themselves are just not in good shape. They're actually pretty dangerous. And we don't have adequate lighting. I just think that as a matter of prioritizing, these things just are coming before the windows. I think we can get by.
I sit on that library board. I'm with Steve. I think that we should probably a lot more than 50,000 if we're gonna be starting putting money away. I think we should look at a bigger number.
Kind of like, what are you thinking, Councilman?
Well, I'm thinking probably 100 to 150.
Okay.
And it's.
For
you can
what?
always-
What are you
it's
guys
always
talking
one of
about?
those that we get to that.
Capital improvements.
For
Windows.
windows? Oh, okay.
So, you know, it's one of those that.
Are you pulling that out of the sky too? Just like they're pulling theirs out of the sky?
Well, I'm just guessing as a
I can tell
former
you-
contractor, you know, you're looking at a lot of windows there.
I guarantee you're not doing it for 50 grand today, more or less 7 years from now or 5 years from now.
Well, and to be clear, we don't even have a bid from anyone on HVAC. But I mean, we've got to start somewhere, setting, the money
Well,
aside, is my
concern
understanding.
when we do these, I mean, we gotta have a little bit more legit, I mean, a bid now doesn't mean nothing 7 years from now.
Right.
But at the end of the day, these change every year and you can update them with your capital improvements every year too. I mean, you should go up, go high before I would cover it going high before I would go low, is all I'm saying, because they said for 2023, next year it'll be through 2028. And, like I said, the price is not gonna go down by any means at the end of the day.
How did you get your number for exterior lighting?
She has bids and quotes from the lighting gallery and from the two different electrical companies here in
Those you
town.
actually got some,
Yes.
A year ago, year plus, 2 years ago. Yeah.
I would look at getting a HVAC bid sooner than later, just because that is on 2023's budget. If it's 80 grand, we probably need to know that sooner than later. Just from future references. I know what a furnace on my house costs is more than 30,000, so you're not gonna do that building for 30,000. So once we get this set, the problem is, it's set.
Furnace at your house is over 30?
Yeah, when I did my addition, central air and the heating and
I don't know, I'm looking at putting a replacement, of course, I've got hot water heater boiler, that's running me about 8,500. But even the exterior lighting, if you got this bid 2 years ago, I know,
It was last year, it's all dated
To be fair,
21.
yeah. To be fair, we started looking at it 2 years ago. We've been looking at a number of things, to be real honest, for a number of years. And so
Right.
it changes every year and things have only gone up. So they're only gonna continue, I'm sure, to go up.
I guess
So,
what we're getting at though is,
yeah.
we approve this and you think you're gonna get HVAC, and it comes in at 50, now we have backed against the wall to find 20. You know, we'd rather have you show us the big number, get that out in the open, and then deal with it, rather than, you know, because maybe some of these items will go through municipal land and building. You know, I mean, there's other ways of dealing with that. So.
just
Understood.
curious, why do you have it twice in there in 2023 and
I was gonna ask that.
2025?
I guess I'd personally, I'd have to defer to Ryan on it.
The previous years, the HVAC system was something that money was gonna be accrued each year to bring it up so that she had money. And the prior year, I'd have to look at, I think it was 5,000 that went into the reserve for the HVAC. And is it Groves that's been coming and repairing it now for you? And has indicated that it's in need of replacing, so you can probably get a bid from him and.
And to be very honest, we asked for a bid about 4 to 5 years ago, and Shannon was part of that, and they just were so busy at the time, and Ryan was just taking over at Grove, I believe. We never got it. And I'm sure they were busy, and we just,
well,
we haven't, I can press on for it, I can ask for
Well,
it
I
again.
think what the council is telling you is, go get bids.
Go get it.
Yeah.
You're gonna need more than one bid too. You're gonna have to go to, I don't know if you,
Well, even if you get one bid, so you know you can do it at that, and then at the time, you can go out and rebid.
right.
Sure.
Try for 2 bids, get 1 solid bid. I think that, I'm hearing you all say that. Is
Yes.
that accurate?
Yep.
There
And
you
you'd
go.
Having
like-
a more accurate
And you'd
number.
like bids on the windows as well?
Well,
If they can do that.
You know,
You could just,
if you could
like
just
a-
get a bid on, let's just say, just give somebody the dimensions, the type of window you want, take them times the number of what windows you got, just get something in there roughly.
Yeah.
You could estimate how much it's gonna cost to put them in,
Yeah.
you know?
Just a little bit more of an educated guess.
Yep.
Because as you can tell here, we
deal
probably
with
differ on
win-
those
yeah,
numbers.
the deal with windows, you can take or get a rough opening type or a rough idea of what one unit's gonna cost, and then for capital improvements, just add 10-15% each year. That should be pretty close, I think, to covering the cost of the windows when it comes to 2027.
So Chris, you guys are thinking about 55,000 right now is what the HVAC?
You know, to be very honest, I don't necessarily think that that's gonna cover it, but I have
Okay.
not really been a part of these discussions, really in the past, as much as I have in the past year or so with Ryan and Amy, and now Corky and Ryan this
Okay.
year. So before, you know, I was told many things by previous folks in those positions, that quite frankly, I mean, we've not gotten to any of it until now.
Well, there you
So
go.
first we're addressing,
Get bids.
yep, and so we're addressing the roof right now, and I'm more than willing to get a solid bid for the HVAC, and I can, I can press forward with that, and then I can even start talking with people about windows. I'd be happy to do that.
And these are preliminary, we all know that. So
Right.
if you can get that as soon as possible, that'd be great. And I can add to the comments here of Chris. We talked last week, and you all know that we authorized going and getting a bid for the fixing of the roof. Chris and I discussed the possibility and the need for the entire roof. And so we got a quote for asking for the entire roof, including the window part and the slanted part. So we are paying, I believe, what is an additional
An additional $3,600.
$3,600 out of that contract, or in addition to the original contract approved, to get a bid for the entire roof. And we are researching the potentiality of a roof made out of recyclable materials, old tires, plastics, called Enviro Shakes, 100% non-destructible, not only fire resistant, fire retardant, so that may be a possibility. Lifetime guarantee, lifetime warranty.
And I've been assured that just so that you understand and everyone understands, that those bids that come forth from WIDSEF, they will all be broken down, so completely, as we discussed.
Do you know is one type, I know we've discussed it here a few times about just going over top of the windows and not having those windows in there at all on the roof. Is that part of any bids?
No, not at this point. The bid at this point is with the windows, with the lighting, with the angling. So but it will include the entire roof.
I think we'd get a more competitive bid if we bid the whole roof versus trying to piecemeal.
And that's exactly what we're doing.
Well, and also if you're working on one part and then you're having to tear that up or parts of it to add the rest of the roof, that also doesn't make a lot of sense either.
And that was exactly the rationale we took when we solicited the proposal for the additional, better to do it all at once. The price quotes remain the same, the lot batch remains the same, the type of shingling you get. That's why we did it that way.
Especially when they're already drawing these specs and plans for the center part of it. It was cheaper in the long run to just do this at the same time.
Sure.
Than to do it later, as a separate, entirely separate, bid for the project.
Okay.
Okay, I will, once Chris gets some estimates to me, I will update this and then give that to Corky, and then he can share that with you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks,
Thank
Chris.
you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
The next one that we have here is the fire department, and then we'll also do emergency management with that. And I will let Tim review that with you.
All right. Pretty much under fire, line by line items, pretty much everything stayed pretty much the same other than things that are out of our control, like health insurance, gasoline and oil. That went up a recommended 40%. I have very modest increases on some of my supply items, maybe a couple $100 on janitorial supplies, special clothing, and hose replacement, safety expenses, just due to the fact that prices of those line items have gone up. The other ones have all pretty much stayed the same, or they have stayed the same. Utilities, I went up $4,800 due to the fact that everybody knows that utilities are going sky high. Any questions on any of those items? Otherwise, I get down to my 500s, which are my capital improvement plans. Otherwise, everything.
So the question I have on the revenue page
Oh, okay, I guess.
is, I see a lot of your expenses, you're budgeting for increases, but I see that you're flat on your budgeted from current budget to the proposed budget. And my question is, I think,
revenues.
again, I think we should consider increasing some of those fees and stuff that we're charging.
Yeah, we looked at, the only one that I really have for a fee is my rental. And then some of my other stuff is like, they still keep, where is this at here now? Yeah, right here. The building permit stuff is still under mine. That's been underneath there for a long time. That would be something that you'd have to talk to Greg about. The one that I really only have any control of is our rental program. And, you know, we discussed increasing that a little bit. I've talked with Shane, who runs the program. Last time we raised it, I believe, was about 4 or 5 years ago. We just went up $5. We're still probably one of the lowest in the area, and, you know, we always get a little bit of pushback from the landlords around town. But with the increases of everything, I actually had this conversation with Shane earlier. We send out all of our recertification stuff roughly in October or November, I should say, for 2023. I would not be opposed to raising that again, just to help start covering our costs on that, because we do spend a lot of time, money on mailings and everything else on that.
So when you say you don't have a lot of input on some of these fees, who does then if you don't?
Well, though, like the building and sign stuff, that's been underneath the fire department for, boy, back and well before my time. That would be Greg Hefta, and some of those are set by the state, like the building and sign, gas fitting and plumbing permits. Those we could increase those, because that's a local ordinance that we have on those. But some of the fees for building permits, that's set by the state.
Okay. So I didn't realize that some of the fees are set by the state. I guess my overall thing is, like I've talked in the other departments, again, our taxes are gonna go up. So I think whatever fees we can increase, especially to cover our cost, for sure, to cover our costs, if not,
Absolutely.
to make, just to try to generate some revenue anywhere we can, to try to offset some of your expenses, and at the end of the day, might offset some of the levies that we have to increase. So that's just my only input.
No, that's a
Jim, why
good
is-
point. I have had that conversation, and we'll take a really hard look at that here in the next couple weeks.
Jim,
And
why
then-
did is there such a reduction between 2020 and 2022 in your rental program of, it's $7,000-8,000. I don't know what the fee is, but in your 101 or 2183,
Okay.
was 29,140 in 2020, and then your income was 23,260 in 2022. I just wondered, you lose that many rentals, or?
Yeah,
That Councilman, that's year-to-date. In
Yeah, you got-
2022.
But even in there,
Even from 2020 to 21, you know, that's.
still lost
Yep.
over 1,000,
Yep, that's, we don't change our rental certification fee by any means. It's just that, more and more rentals are getting sold. A lot of them have been going, and we've worked with Corky on this. Some of these people who have had rental properties and they are renting from somebody, instead of renting, they go to contract for deeds. And if we cannot,
play the game.
yep, that gets them out of the game. And so, they're finding some, I shouldn't say a loophole, but it's just the way it is. We lost quite a few from people doing,
Yeah, that's a legal loophole. It's
Yep.
permissible, and they go from renting to contract for deed or contract to own.
yep. So we do lose several every year that way also, so.
I
And
agree
some,
too.
might have had a fire in them or something where they get removed, or they're just too expensive to fix up from
Can't
our.
imagine, there's gotta be a lot of labor involved in that, doing the bookwork and inspections, and, I don't know what the fees are, but I agree with Delane, we just figured out it's $46 to run a permit for a food truck, so, if you break it down and say, well, we got 10 hours of labor into this, we gotta cover that, and,
So-
like I said, if we haven't changed it for, what'd you say last year was?
I'd say, I think it's been probably about at least 4 or 5 years.
We gotta keep up with the inflation for sure, and
So, can you tell me what the rental program consists of? I guess don't know what the rental is.
Okay, anybody that rents, a landlord or a property owner that rents a piece of property in town has to register that piece of property with the fire department, okay? If it's non-owner occupied. That piece of property is registered with us. We do an initial inspection on it, and they have to follow the minimum housing code, and right now we're using the IPMC, which is the International Property Maintenance Code, and it has to meet the regulations of that code. We do an inspection on it. We write up a deficiency letter. Landlord has so much time to fix certain items in it, and unless it's life safety, they have to do it, within, probably even that day, depending on how it is. But we do initial inspection and a follow-up inspection several times. We do more than that. The discussion has come up, and there's so many of them in town that we end up doing them on a 3-year cycle because there's so many actual units in town. So they're on a 3-year cycle. We have talked about raising the prices before. Past administration and mayors and stuff have talked about that. At that time, the program was improving the property values of these homes. So that's kind of one of the reasons that they kept it at kind of a lower fee, and to make sure people were registering these properties. And by the properties being maintained, and it just was a better neighbors to have. The houses weren't run down, the yards were kept up better now. They're a lot safer and everything like that. So the rental program has done wonders. When I first started doing rentals in 96, we would write up pages of deficiencies in these homes, and now we go there and there's just like 2 or 3 items. The homes are way nicer today than they were when we started this program.
So are you
Yards-
saying do they have a choice if they can participate in that or not? Is that it?
No, they do have to.
So they're a captive audience, basically. They
Yep.
have to do it, right?
Yep.
So then at the very minimum, I think we need to figure out how much it's costing you or your staff. Even the amount, say, take a worst case scenario and a best case scenario and averaging it out, how much time you're going out there multiple times, and I guess trying to figure that out, because we just can't go backwards on these types of services.
Yep, absolutely, and I wouldn't be opposed to maybe setting up a schedule where it's maybe over a 2 or 3 year time frame so we don't hit these landlords so hard. I know they're making good money on them and stuff, and then we hear from the landlords, we hear from the renters that now our rent is going up, and the landlords, but if we make it, over like 2 or 3 years or 4 years or what have you, I would definitely not be opposed to that.
It's the cost of doing business. Their landlords are gonna pass it on to the tenants anyhow, probably, one way or another, through rent or whatever, but, yeah.
Yep, absolutely, no problem.
As a former property owner, and I dealt with Tim on some of this rental inspection stuff, and for the fee that they're charging, I've never raised any cane about it, or as I said, a former property investor, that it does make people get things done. And far as the fees, I've wondered why it hasn't gone up, because on some occasions, and Tim and I have talked about it, where they're going back and forth to certain rental properties because the guy is not getting the things on the list done. So there's no way that what they're putting in is covered.
I think a fair approach to first come at it is kind of what Corky and Ashley were talking about. How long does it take you to go through the process, and what does that time mean in dollars to the city? And I think that's the best way we should approach a lot of these fees and everything we do right now.
Yep, absolutely, I don't disagree with that one bit.
And there's also complaints too that the fire department receives that, like you said, there's yards not being mowed, or there's garbage issues. And I've dealt with some of that stuff where tenants are throwing the garbage out in the backyard or whatever. Parked cars that are set in one spot. And like I said, they're not being charged appropriately.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, there's a few of those programs that there could be a little bit more bite in them, and we have implemented some, and that's really taken care of a lot of our frequent flyers, but there's some other of those programs that I think should be looked at personally. So. Yep, absolutely. I'll go through my capital improvement, unless you have any other questions on any of the actual line items.
So on something like this, like a fee schedule change or something like that, I mean, isn't that part of your, recommendations to give to us, rather than wait for the council to look at the budget and go backwards? Because if you're saying that it's increased by manpower hours or whatever it is, then that should be recommended to the council to relook at a fee, so that we know what you're comfortable with, what you're dealing with, and then we approve it and go up or down or whatever, so.
Yep, we've had that conversation this year
Well, you
already.
said it's 4 years, so I mean, it's time to maybe look at that and get.
Councilman Melby, we have already tried to start that in our department head meetings, but it will be I believe the sense I'm getting from the council here is that we should more strongly discuss it and bring to the council specific department recommendations with respect to our fee schedule.
Right, because we don't want to overdo it and you start losing or whatever. But we would like, you're the ones that are doing it, so it's your recommendation.
Right, for sure. So like I would ask why you charge, or why should we charge this amount? And you would say, well, it costs us this much to do this. And this is what I think it's, for us to, so that's just my thought.
And
Your expenses are looked at every year, your income should be looked at every year.
Yep, we have, and I know the.
I would also ask that maybe a little research is done about neighboring cities and their costs as well, just so we have a comparison.
Yep, well.
We can look at the way that we did it with the license fee. I think it's a good place to start. How many hours does it take typically to do X? What's our hourly rate pursuant to our contract? Do a multiplier and get a general idea, and then compare it to the fee we charge.
Yep.
Yeah, we are a municipality, but we need to recognize that there is a cost of doing business and everything, and there's a cost to our services.
Yep.
And we don't print money down here in council chambers. We have to get it, but we have to be reasonable about it. So I can tell you that department heads will be discussing that tomorrow at our department head meeting.
So, the only revenue that the library I'm sorry to interrupt here, the library gets is just the tax revenue, is that correct? There's no other revenue that they can,
They're associated through Laurel.
okay,
Their payroll and everything is paid by Laurel.
okay,
Yep, the only thing,
It's our city building.
Sorry, Al.
Yep.
all right.
we don't generate a lot of fine money.
What?
We don't generate a lot of fine money at the library.
Can't generate enough late fees to offset that.
$287,000.
All right, for my capital improvement plan for the fire department, these are some of the items that we're looking at. Turnout gear was the 3 sets that I buy every year. I suppose I should go off your sheet here, because I suppose they're in a different order than what I have them.
No, this is fine. They have this too.
All right, oh, they do, okay.
Yep.
A drone, that would be extremely helpful for whether it's our inspections, large fires, pre-plans, using it in other departments, like building department and also public works. Our shop overhead door with installation, that one there is starting to rust, and it's starting, that door, it was put in 2006 was the shop insulated door. My fire vehicle fund, $55,000, that goes into my reserve account, and for buying all of our fire apparatus, including the building official's truck. And in this year, in 2023, we'll be replacing our Unit 2, our fire pickup, which will be over 10 years old. Radios for $10,000, that just kind of goes into a reserve account because those things are so expensive. 800 megahertz radios, if we lose one radio or break one or one goes bad, they're about $6,300 a piece. And we found out that we should be looking at different radios down the road due to the fact that these are gonna be unserviceable very soon. And we spent a lot of money getting those, so we're just trying to keep those, keep them up to date, actually. Auto extrication tool for our first out engine. The current one is a 3-person lift, and we only have 2 people on the truck. Consists of a power unit and hose and a tool, which should be a 3-person lift. We're looking at getting a battery operated tool for that truck, so one person can work with that. And our auto extrication tool is actually, they're about 16 years old right now. And then the sweeper brushes for our skid steer, which for snow removal, we use that for cleaning our lot, and also the park shop uses that for cleaning sidewalks. So, any questions on any of those items?
How many drones do we have in the city of Crookston? Do we
I
have,
think just one, and that's
who has that one?
Brandon.
Just Brandon's, that's all we have. PD does not have one?
Yeah, this would be a shared one with everybody, you know, it would be shared for.
So one question, if it's shared, does it make sense to, divvy it up on the capital improvement plans to each department that would be sharing it, per se? Does that help things at all, or doesn't it matter?
Is that something that could go to central garage?
Oh,
No, is it?
I don't know.
I mean, they share some of these different vehicles that they don't use regularly.
Yeah, so you lease it out type of thing when you need
Yeah.
it.
They would pay their own share, and it would be owned by.
The number would remain the same, but it would
Yeah.
be split out, or if you put it in central garage, it's just in there. Doesn't change the bottom line, it's just change how it's apportioned.
That's what we did when we bought the generator for the city hall here. IT and myself split it, and then at the very end, I think a couple council said, well, what's the difference, you know, I mean, so, it comes out of the same pot anyhow, so.
Right.
But
Then you take more ownership of it as far as
I'll store
fixing
it.
it,
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
maintenance and all that.
And I've trained my guys to go do all the,
Yeah, the thing about a drone, you need, the operator needs to go with it, because you need to know what you're doing with them.
yep, absolutely. I actually have a couple guys going to some free training here, and then end of this month, just to.
So one question I had in 2024, you got jet boat there. If we lose the DNR boat, is what's going on there with the DNR boat, or?
Right now, they, so to say, loaned us their boat. We've had it for probably about, we've had that thing for 8-9 years. That thing, I just keep moving it down every year. It's about our only boat that we have 2 boats. We have a jet boat and then we have a tiller. And probably 90% of the time or more, as most of you probably know, a tiller gets you nowhere on this river with the rock rapids and how shallow our river is.
Right.
So if we lose our DNR boat, if we're gonna do any kind of rescues or anything on the river, we have to have a jet boat.
So the jet boat, they're gonna take it back, or they're selling it?
We don't know.
Oh, I see.
We almost lost it. The new Gabe Morton from the area came and looked at it, and he actually said that we're gonna take it back. You know, we're just literally storing it and can use it, and we maintain it. I mean,
Right.
when we need a battery for it, they even come and buy a battery for it. But they could walk into our station any day and say, we're taking this back as an asset.
Okay.
So,
Since we keep moving that back, would it be a better deal to do a budget for it, like allocation every year to get put towards that? I mean, something you need, I guess, that's my.
I do have money in my reserve for my fire vehicle fund, which if we lost it, I could take it out of there, out of my reserve account, and then we could maybe cross that bridge. I mean, that's how I kind of looked at it. If we needed it in a hurry, if they came and took it tomorrow, we'd probably go buy one right away. I'd just have to get approval from you, and then we could reallocate it
I guess I'd
in.
rather see a 5,000 or some lower number on there, and just, that way you have it, and maybe they may never take it, but if they do, then you got at least partly paid for, you know.
I sure can.
Tim, do we have any possibility of using the counties? Is it still functional?
I don't know.
Okay, I'm just asking.
I honestly don't know.
Fair enough.
And I can't even tell you where the county stores theirs. I ask them sometimes, and it's here, it's out at the Maple Lake, it might be out by Foston. I mean, you know, when we need it right now. I don't have time to run up to their garage and get
Or
one.
Langby or Foston or.
Yep, I need it right now.
Regarding your radios, Tim, are they, they're going obsolete in a few years or what?
Yeah, we got contacted by Stone's Radio that our radios that we were able to get on a grant about, 4 years ago, we got that grant. And, oh God, it was more than that. It's probably about 6 years ago, time flies. We got that grant to buy all new radios, cost $174,000 grant, and I think it only cost us $8,300 for our radios. But each radio is worth $6,300, so we lose one radio, you know, that'll eat that up in a hurry. So I'm just kind of putting a little bit of money away at a time. And hopefully when it comes, just kind of like our SCBA's, I put money in a reserve account, and we were able to get a grant for them. So we're kind of, and this just gives me a thought, if guys lose a radio, you know, I need to get one right now.
Right, I know, I'm just kinda curious, cause you've got it on 25, 26, 27, but you don't have it on 24 item.
Yeah, I saw 24 looked a little too heavy, so and anyhow, these are just moving 24, 25, 26, and 27, they're all just.
Yeah, moving targets.
Yep,
I
they're
get
all
that,
moving
but-
targets, and if I spend some of that money out of there in 23, I'll definitely add it in 24. Any other questions? I'll look into the rental certification program. I already had it on my radar, but no, I appreciate your guys will be backing me when we come in and talk about that, because that's, other years when we've come in and talked about it, it's, you know, we'll always get the landlords in here, and it hasn't always gone the way that we wanted it to go, because, you know, we hear the stories of, now we're just gonna be passing it on to this and that, and then everybody starts feeling emotional, and.
Right.
So, I mean, if I hear that, we're gonna get the
Well,
council standing behind me, and.
and maybe in other years, I might even tend to maybe agree with some of those, but like I said, this is gonna be a tough year for our city, and that's the only reason why I'm tooting the horn of getting revenue to try to, even a little bit, cut down the taxes that we're gonna have to come up with.
Yep, absolutely, and I don't disagree.
How many of the rentals, though, you think fly under the radar, though, that you never?
Well, we find several every year, you know. I would say we probably find maybe by chance or by someone letting us know, or we have an incident there. I would say we probably find about 15 a year.
Is there a penalty levied if they're not?
No, nothing in our ordinance on a penalty for, I mean, there is if they don't follow through with our, well, I shouldn't say that, there probably is some kind of a penalty we could charge them. We could probably find some way to charge them for that.
I mean, to encourage everybody for doing the right thing, they're supposed to be doing it. I mean, we should look at our ordinance and see if there's any type of penalties that should be levied, because if they go several years without paying this, and then something happens and you stumble across it, I mean, they got basically X amount of years free, right?
I find that a crazy number, 15 a year.
Oh, yeah.
That's way too many.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we can only go by what people do.
So how
I
many,
mean,
if you
I
find
can't go through the
15,
phone
are there
book.
30 out there, or 50 out there?
Huh?
I said, if you can find 15 on an average year, is there 40 or 50 of them doing that? No, I don't know, like I said.
I honestly don't know, and some of those, they could be, you know, when someone sells their house, you know, we don't follow up on.
Right.
You know, you sell a house, I don't follow up on who bought it, they could be renting it out, I
Supposed to
don't
be
know.
for
Yeah.
their safety, for the
I
renter's
was gonna
safety.
say, at the end of the day, it's about the safety, making sure they're
We
adhering to
we
the-
do everything we can, if we see like a name and a address and stuff, don't, we follow up on them right away. I mean, as soon as we hear about them, and
I'd like to put a note on that, that was another thing to look into for sure, getting some kind of backlash if they do get caught, because they'll play the game all day if there's no.
If there's no penalty incurred for
Yeah, I
not
mean-
getting inspected, why would you get it inspected?
Right,
well,
I mean, it's just-
right.
I will follow up on it, I'll talk with Shane.
I don't care if there's three, it's still, there's three more than there should be. I mean,
Absolutely, I don't
That's 3 too
disagree.
many.
all right.
But, we just can't sit there and go through the phone book and start.
No, for
following
sure.
up.
There's gotta be some onus on the property owner and.
If there's little teeth there, they'd think twice about
Right.
breaking the rules, I guess.
And some of them we find are current landlords already in town, and they might buy a property, and some are really good about telling us that they've picked up another one, and some aren't so good until we
So
hear
question,
about it.
in the city of Crookston, if somebody has rental property, is there a process that they have to go through the city to let the city know that, hey, I'm renting this property? Is there anything
rental
other that we can probably use to check to see if, I mean, like, for example, you know, everybody pays their taxes, so everybody knows, but when you rent something, is there some type of thing that is a check that they have to let the city know I'm renting this property? I don't know, just.
Be a
That would probably-
non-homestead thing, wouldn't it, Tim?
Well, I think probably one of the only ways I could think the city would have any teeth on it would be, that could be a question when they get their water turned on. That would be
Yeah.
probably about the only way I could think of that, how the city could regulate that.
Yeah,
You would know who the bill is sent to,
right.
but
Well-
you would have to coordinate with that, who owns it. and
You just
who's
have to
on the
ask,
water.
I would have to believe, is this a rental or not, you know, because
If Joe
90%
Smith-
of the time, the bill is being sent to the renter. So if you're just
Exactly, so
asking, you know, I mean,
There would have to be a comparison between who's the water bill, the renter, who owns it. That would be one check. But. yeah,
I'm
there's-
just
there's-
asking.
Yeah, and I think most of those, Steve, that we find is one of the landlords has probably bought it halfway through the year, and then we hear about it, but maybe were in good intentions to register it when they registered the rest of their properties, but they hadn't, and, oh, by the way, we bought this one. But a lot of them are good, hey, we're buying this property up here, do you wanna come take a look at it before we move somebody in, so.
All right, then on page 31 is the emergency management budget of Tim's. And you'll see the year-to-date, the numbers that are in that are from the flood this year.
That's it?
Well,
So far,
just city costs.
right.
So far. Once again, line items all stayed, well, I don't have a whole lot of line items in emergency management, but under miscellaneous, 0217 and 0221, repairs and equipment, I just added $1,000 to each of those. As you all know how expensive it was, and we're updating a lot of our systems and stuff that we have put in place for our high water event. Obviously, you can't predict everything that's gonna happen, but we went through a lot of supplies and repairs this year. So I just increased those two line items by $1,000 each. Everything else stayed the same. So then down to my capital improvements. Some stuff that we've talked about, levy signage. I've talked to, several of the councilmen and mayor about that at our CERT training night. We had people from out of town, we had National Guard and everybody else walking our levees that have never been there before, so we were talking about putting up some kind of a signage on the levees temporary signage, because we cannot drive stakes in there. So people do know where they are. They have never been in our city before, and if they have an issue, how do they know where they're at? So we talked about putting up, so that would be temporary signage that we would use and then take down and put back up whenever we needed it. Radios, again, you've heard me talk over and over about radio communications for our ward command posts, and our boots on the ground is not up to par. It could use an upgrade, so put some money in there for that. I'm looking at getting some used equipment. And then our CERT members are growing a little bit, and we need to supply them with the bags, so I put a little bit of money in there for that.
Well, if you let me retire, I can.
Gain a bag, don't worry, Dale, you're not retiring till we're gonna push you around there with a wheelchair, so.
I gave him my bag, so.
Yep, yep, I took him out of the, so. EM is pretty easy, not much happens in that one, or I shouldn't say not much happens, but it's a fairly small budget items, or budget. For what it's asked to do, it's a pretty small dollar item. It's not only high water, we have everything else we have to deal with. I know everybody gets a little centered on high water, but we've had tornadoes and everything else happen here, so. Any other questions for me?
Good job.
Good.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll just take it away.
That sounds good.
All right. So we can first go through the revenue section. That definitely something we want to talk about. I can go through that with you. Any questions you may have or whatever, and then after that, on the expenditures, I think I have 6 or 8 we'll talk about. Then the CIP, and again, any conversation would be just any changes or anything in each expenditure line item or whatever. So on the revenue, if you look at the intergovernmental revenue on the first section there, the first line, federal grants, police, that is reimbursement for any ballistic vests or bulletproof vests that we buy each year. It's a bulletproof vest program through the feds. They reimburse us 50% of each cost of each particular vest. And typically each year we buy 3 to 4 vests, replacement vests each year, new or replacement. And so typically, I'm anticipating, I didn't put a number on that line item for projected, just I'm currently doing that grant. But I'm anticipating probably about $3,000 this year for that. Moving down, police training reimbursement. Every year, the Minnesota Post Board, Peace Officer Standard and Training, they reimburse a certain portion of the training that each officer attends each year. Again, that grant is doing about 30 days, currently working on that. We projected about 14,000 coming in, just kind of auditing off the last few years that we have received those funds. Next one down, state grants and other. You can see in the past we received significant amounts there. Again, projecting about 100,000 this year. That's basically a Minnesota state aid. So each year, each law enforcement agency, they report to the state how many officers they have working for them at that time. Licensed officers, staffing, and there's just money via legislature that's designated each law enforcement agency each year, and you can see typically we received last 2 years $130,000 to $150,000 for that. The last line item in that section, school resource officer, again, we're projecting about $47,000 this year. That's the 50% reimbursement that the high school pays for that position. Charges for service.
So on that section, sorry,
No
on that
problem.
section alone, there's These are just grants you're getting, so there's no input for you to do anything other than what you get, right? It is what it is.
Correct. It's all on percentages and either the amount of training you attend or the officers you have working for you, correct?
So on the, one question on the state grant other police, and like 2020, it was 154, 120. Has it went down because of the number of police officers that you had? Is that part of the reason, or is the funding from the state gotten less and less each year?
So how that grant is unique is when at the time that we fill out the grant, it's required the officers working for you at that time, not what you're budgeted for. So in years past, we might have been full complement at 16 officers, and then the next year might be 12 or 14. So it's kind of unfortunate that way. At the time that you fill out the grant, you have to put the number of officers that
So
are
that's
currently.
probably why it went down.
Correct. There's some discrepancies in that money,
Okay.
exactly. As far as fees for service, again, we do not have a lot of revenue coming in at the police department. I can go through them if you want, or if you have any questions on them. Special police services, that's just what it is. Anytime we have any service where we're hired as security or something like that, we bill applicably per officer who's working at their standard rate plus fringe benefits. Next line down is that's money we recapture for animal impound, any animals that are seized, and we're able to recover those costs if someone comes and claims their animals. Parking violations, that's exactly what that is. Any parking citations, I should say, or parking ordinances that we write each year, that's where the revenue comes in for that. Wrecker fees, those are costs in reference to, again, if we tow a vehicle for a DWI or a case related as evidence, we'll try to recover those fees if possible from the owners of those vehicles. Refunds and reimbursements, those are court restitution that the city might be paid in typical cases where we arrest somebody and they damage a squad car or something like that. So those numbers are all over the place. That just depends on, if someone damaged any equipment we have or anything like that, we seek that through restitution.
So, these, like fines, parking fines and just stuff like that, is that left to your, in your purview to increase them, or does that is that dictated by the state, or is that dictated by our ordinances, or how does that?
So those two specific line items, animal control, shelter, and parking violations, we run those under the city ordinances, so those would be our discretionary as far as what we can do for fee schedules. Like Corky said earlier, I have updated those fee schedules. I did keep them the same as, actually, I take that back. We increased the parking fees, parking fines, parking violations, excuse me. They used to be like $5 per site per ticket. We increased them to $10 for first violation. I believe 15 for second, and then subsequent violations increase from there. The license, animal license, those have kind of stayed status quo for years. We could, again, increase those. It's $5 for spade, $10 for not spade. Unfortunate in that line item, I did some public awareness last week on Valley Talk. We have 3,000 some residents in the city. They say average 2.5 animals per household. We should be selling up to 10,000 those a year, and we sell about 100. So it would be nice to increase that revenue. I'm trying to do some public awareness and just some education on that, but again, difficult to collect some of those. Anytime an animal's impounded, we recover those fees, but to get them to come in otherwise is difficult.
So anybody that has an animal in town's got to be licensed, but by.
Correct,
and
cat
they go
or
to the
dog,
City
correct.
Hall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, the police department. They come to the police department. Mm-hmm. So.
Can I ask about the UMC parking violations? It
So-
doesn't look like we've collected anything except for $30 this year. How does that work?
I would argue that dates back several years. At one point, the police department did do parking enforcement and security at UMC. We haven't for several years.
Okay.
And, I haven't audited that line item, but I'd argue that goes back probably 20-some years.
Okay.
So I think back in the day when we were in charge of that service, we recovered some money that way, but UMC is completely in charge of their own parking and security.
So the $30 that we have year to date, just curious. That's just
I would
random.
definitely, I saw that too, and I honestly, I can't answer your question where that money came in from, but whether it was a tow charge or something, I'm not sure how that came.
Sure. Okay.
I know, just to recall back when I was with the police department at that point had a meter maid or somebody that was doing traffic enforcement, walking around and at that point, it was pretty much break even or a little bit more for wages and so on. And then it just phased out the one that we had for many years left, and it stopped.
You know, and I would say 7, 8 years ago, we did budget $7,500 per year for parking enforcement, but that line item, we, you know, it was eliminated just for the fact of what it cost to support that and the revenue recaptured for that. So, and last copier charges, those are for data requests anytime someone comes in and gets paper copies. Fines and forfeitures, the only line item there to discuss, I guess, on the next one is court and traffic citations. You can see each year approximately $40,000, and those are fees we recover from any citations that we write in the city of Crookston. State citations, we get a certain percentage of that back. The other line item in there that has some money is police forfeitures. That would be when we sell vehicles or have a police auction. That's where that revenue is recovered. I think this year we have 4 or 5 that we're selling, so we'll see some later this year. Other than that, miscellaneous revenues, I think those are pretty self-explanatory. Unless you guys have any questions on those, I'm happy to discuss those. Okay?
I do have a question.
Sure.
So you have police forfeitures, which is 5201, and then you have police forfeitures vehicles, 6243.
So my understanding of that, and I had the same question. So on the fines and forfeitures, that's the money that we receive from the sales. And on that police forfeited vehicle, you'll see like for 2021 actual, it was $33,800. So sometimes what we do, I try to stay away from, but sometimes it happens. We'll forfeit a vehicle that's owned by a bank. So unless we can make a profit margin on that, we will return that back to the lien holder.
Okay.
So sometimes these lien holders, they're companies from California, Texas, et cetera, and we'll agree to sell that vehicle for them. So then the city hall writes a check back to the bank for that money. So my understanding is one comes in and that other line is money going out. So like that $33,800, it's not that the city, if I'm saying this correctly, tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But it's not technical, it's just money we had to pay to a bank or something like that, their share of a sold vehicle in a forfeited auction.
So it's the share.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
As far as any expenditures, like I said, I have just a few I'll go through and unless there's any other questions, obviously, anything where there was some changes from last year. Right off the bat, salaries, the change to that is obviously we added the 3.5% cost of living increase as directed by administration, and the other piece is, you know, from other conversations we've had as a group, I know here, and just other conversations we can certainly have, I did add 2 additional officers to that salary line item to hopefully bring on 2 probationary officers in 2023. As you can see in some of the notes, that did increase that line item, the probationary officer cost by $116,376.
And just so you all understand, that would fully staff law enforcement.
Fully staffed plus add 2, right, Corky?
Right.
Yes.
Fully staffed plus, yes, 2.
Salaries overtime, I guess I do have that highlight. I would just recommend that we would leave that the same. As you can see in years past, we have expenses significantly more than that. Again, other conversations, happy to discuss this in much detail as you need. Adding 2 officers, I believe we could reduce that even further, possibly by 50%. But until we were fully staffed, I just wouldn't dare change that number for next year.
And I can't reiterate enough. Fully staffing our officers reduces overtime, plus it relieves our officers of the pressure and the difficulty working back-to-back shifts, not having time to recoup and regenerate.
Well, it's just about pays for one right there. I mean, that's the whole thing about it, you know.
I mean, would you like me to take a couple of minutes and kind of explain the benefits of adding a couple officers, or would you like to reserve that for another meeting?
I'd like to hear you.
Okay.
No.
So again, you know, we've had these conversations in the past. I'll keep this brief. I'll keep this short. I know with the U.S. inflation rate increasing and everybody asking for more money, We're just trying to prepare a budget that, we're moving forward as a city, still providing the same level of service that the city's come to expect with officer safety and personal life and everything involved. So the main reasons that I am asking for 2 officers, one is recruitment and officer retention, and I know that's been forefront conversations in every department head. But currently, even at full complement, which is 14 officers, we're still operating very understaffed. When an officer's at training, vacation, sick, or we're short-staffed, we're operating at unsafe staffing levels. Officers are rarely getting scheduled days off for the fact that we're having to backfill and maintain those staffing levels to at least bare minimum levels. Obviously, this has a negative impact on officer morale and family life. Officers are just exhausted. They just are. And we've had several officers, and I know we've had some of these conversations that have left in the past for other agencies. We've even done some recruiting on some officers that have left other agencies to try to bring them back, and they just have kind of joked and said, on the staffing levels and how busy you guys are, why would I leave for less money to go work in a busier, understaffed environment? Allowing 2 additional officers would create multiple schedule options for us. It would open so many doors for us outside of increase, officer morale, family life. Officers would be able to know on their days off, they actually have a day off. They don't have to come back into work. And again, adding 2 officers, I predict we could save up to 50% in the budgeted line item for overtime, that 60,000. I think we could cut that in half. Again, reducing the actual cost for those 2 officers. Another main reason we're the busiest law enforcement agency in Polk County and actually some of the surrounding areas. I have a 13 city study that can reflect that data. It was a study we did a few months ago. It was kind of interesting to see the statistics on that. Currently, we're comparing to cities to the west and locally, we're 6 to 15 officers they have 6 or 15 officers, depending on the agency, more than us. And we respond to 1,500 to 2,000 calls conservatively a year more than each of those agencies. When you look at the FBI and Bureau of Justice studies, the average officer per capita should be 2.5 to 3.5 officers per 1,000 residents. So I audited 13 cities in the state that were similar size to Minnesota. Of those cities, the average was 2.5 officers per 1,000, giving the average of about 8,000 population, 18 to 20 officers. At our current staffing levels, we're currently at 2 officers per 1,000 residents. That brings us at the 16 we currently have. Increasing that number just by 0.25% to 2.25% per 1,000 residents would bring our staffing levels to 18. The extra 2 that I'm asking for is still under the national average. Like we discussed earlier, the officer safety piece, that's a large piece of it. We have had officers leave because of that being understaffed. When we're short, we run 2 officers at night, 2 officers during the day. Again, adding that additional officer would increase those levels when we're at full complement, where we could literally have somebody gone almost any time and still eliminate overtime. Currently, right now, we have certain times of the day, I'm not going to say what times because I know this is a media, where there's 1 officer working during the day or night. And honestly, for a city our size, that's just really unheard of, and that's opening ourselves up to a lot of lawsuits.
Most of your expense for your officers are patrolling and answering calls, is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
So in that, over the years, even though our population has decreased over the years, you and I had a conversation one time, those calls are actually increasing.
Correct.
Even though our population. So some people may say, well, why do we need more officers when our population is went down over the years? Well, when you talk in a number of calls, it makes a lot more sense that way, I guess, in my mind.
And I would argue, Nathan and I were just talking today, that I think our call base is going to be higher than it's ever been this year. We've just been extremely busy. There hasn't really been a break in anything lately, and it's just been going.
And policing's so legislated now that the amount of time spent on a specific call is just drastically increased. The obligations for searches, expectations of privacy, things like that, the amount of time each call takes to handle is, in my 14-year career, is just
Is there any data that says like, 10 years ago, the average call was took this amount of time versus what it is now, or is that not?
To put a specific time on it versus something, that requires a search warrant as it would have not required one even as little as 5 years ago. An average search warrant can take 1 to 3 hours depending on the scenario, and a cop could write 15 to 30 of those a
So
year.
and to be honest, the education I received from you guys is because in my mind, I'm looking for budget savings, why, maybe sometimes through attrition, we can do less with what we got, maybe we don't, have to patrol as much, but if you're telling me you only got this many people on patrol, that's not a lot. I mean, it's really not, so I mean.
No, and to reiterate what Nathan said, the time to process and service calls is taking longer. There's more time involved with that, and our call base is just slowly increasing each year too. Like you said, it's not decreasing. And it's being difficult to meet the expectations of, what we need to provide as law enforcement and what public comes to expect, Like he said, just the changes in modern law enforcement, there's a lot more expected from police officers than there was in the past. We try to take a community policy methodology approach to all of our calls, empathetic relationship with the community, trying to build long-term solutions, through de-escalation and different techniques to try to reduce, any physical encounters. Mental health is on the rise, as we all know. That's kind of a forefront in law enforcement. How can we, one, provide proper care for that facility and what we need to do? We're doing probably one on average. I don't have the exact statistics in front of me, but several a month anyway, I'll say, if not one or more a week, mental health transports to other facilities throughout the state and North Dakota. And again, like he said, the calls are taking longer to complete. When I was working the road, I've been with the city almost 19 years, everything was DWI, alcohol related. Now it's controlled substance related. We've sought opinions of prosecutors and other people in the area, and the average that we're coming up with is probably 2 controlled substance DWIs versus 1 alcohol DWI. And that takes a lot longer to process. Like Nathan said, we have to obtain search warrants for that to obtain the blood and urine. It ties up another officer in the jail for up to several hours at a time, reducing that number from 2 or maybe 3 officers on the street down to 1. Again, having that officer safety, again, adding that additional officer to each patrol rotation. That's the 2. It would add 1 officer to each side or each patrol rotation, squad A and B, we call it. You could literally have somebody tied up in the jail and still have 2 or 3 officers out on the street to deal with everything. The opioid crisis, just that again, we're seeing more overdoses. We're seeing more time and education and training involved with that. So, digital technology, social media, same thing. A lot of crimes are committed over social media on your cell phones, tablets, everything else. They're restricting as much access or anything you can do, again, relating back to search warrants. So I'm going to quit talking about it, but as you can see the point, everything is just taking much longer. The different cameras we have, downloading that, the distrust in law enforcement, unfortunately, if they didn't see it on a video or audio, it didn't happen. So now we're downloading more videos and stuff for prosecution and however that looks. So again, even when I was working patrol 15, 16 years ago, the call time that it takes to process calls properly is significantly increased.
All right, I got a question for you. By adding 2 full officers in this year, it's costing you anticipate $53,920, and then by 2023, that's going to reduce to 10. Your estimate.
Say that by 220. Say that one more time, please. The last portion.
The severance pay I'm looking at.
Okay.
In 2022 is $53,920.
Yep.
You anticipate that, and then by the 23, it'll be 10,000. That's what you anticipate. Is that because you're adding 2 more officers then?
No, I'll tell you how I came up with that number. I appreciate you asking. So if you look in like year 21 and then the actual that we spent this year, $53,920, that is because we've had officers leave the department that have been with us for a significant amount of time. You can see the $53,920. Chief Biermeyer obviously retired last year, and we had some other officers leave. So anytime we have that officer leave, obviously they're paid all of their vacation and half of their sick time. Wow. So what I did to come up with that $10,000 is I audited the last 10 years of officers leaving our department. I also took an average of the 1 to 5 year officer as far as how much time they have sick and vacation time. I took an average of that. Also anticipating possible any officers leaving next year, and I feel comfortable budgeting $10,000 for that.
Thank you.
Darren, I'm just curious, and I do wonder about the justification for 2 more officers. It sounds like this would be a huge retention tool for you guys to have additional people, and I think that's been a big issue for you lately, right? Is the
Absolutely.
retention piece. I also wonder too, if we're losing money every time we're having to onboard new officers, that we could significantly save if we're able to like keep a solid group on, right?
Absolutely, and I do have some other data to support that as far as what it costs to outfit an officer each time, you know, an officer is brought on, with the training costs, the field training costs for that. And like you said, I didn't reduce that from, you know, the actual cost per officer. I do feel we can cut overtime, but exactly like you said, and the main priorities, I'll tell you, of not only our staff, but probably citywide, are retention and recruitment, right? Getting those officers, getting good quality people, getting them to stay. And the longer we can have people, you know, right now all we're doing is continually training people. And that has a significant cost, you know, into the tens of thousands per officer. You know, 10,000 or so per officer by the time you put the training and everything together. So, you know, if we're doing 1 or 2 a year, that's a significant cost versus if we were able to save them by adding that staff, getting back to that quality of life that everybody's looking for. You know, it's always nice to put the overtime check in your pocket, but, you know, common theme around at least our department is they would much rather have their time off than the money in their pocket at this point. They're just overworked, unfortunately, they're exhausted.
Seasoned veterans, I imagine.
Correct.
You know.
That's just not police department. Nobody wants overtime these days. I mean, they just want,
Right.
they want to do their 40 and go home.
You know, and we're trying to still uphold all the community outreach programs and everything else, and it's just difficult. You know, when I say volunteer, obviously there's a pay behind that, but just getting officers to work those shifts and everything else. And I do believe, you know, reducing that stress and some of that exhaustion and overtime that they would have to work, you know, we could hopefully build and expand on some of those outreach programs and kind of bring them back to what we used to be. It's just difficult to maintain some of those services right now.
Yeah, as far as one officer, are you willing to share not the times, but how many hours, or is there only one officer on?
Multiple hours a day.
Pardon?
Multiple hours a day.
As a former Crookston police officer, I ended up working some shifts, 4 to 6 hours, one officer. And back in the day, you take the crew that was on before you, they're not gonna answer your phone. And there's times that I went on burglary calls, and the only one there, no one available for an hour to hour and a half. And in one case, another officer went upon a shooting where a husband had killed his wife, and that officer showed up there, went into the scene, and the gentleman ended up ending his life in the garage where he could have went the other way for that one officer. So for all the years that I was with the PD and there should be no reason that
One officer.
by himself.
And I have done some audits as far as that in those timeframes, you know, to see, you know, obviously some of those times you could argue that it's some of the lower call base, but there's still a significant amount that you're still responding to by yourself.
Yeah. Well, and if you're tied up at the jail or something like that too.
Right.
We obviously always compare ourselves to the closest police department to our west, and we average around 1,500 more calls than they do a year. Our patrol division is 10, and theirs is 18.
They have 6 more officers than we do.
We can just see the increase in the billing when, you know, for criminal complaints.
Yeah.
Used to be 6,000, 7,000 tops. I mean, we're at 11, 12, $14,000. That's just telling me that you guys are way busier, but almost double what they were 3, 4 years ago.
Very much so.
Is there a sense as to why we have, I mean, it's just strange that our two communities are so different, and, I mean, I would understand if you...
You know, and I've put a few reasons together. We've done some brainstorming on this too, right? Because, I mean, that's definitely a reasonable question. You know, Crookston's unique, I think, from other cities in Polk County, you know, the size that it is in other surrounding counties. You know, one, I think part of it is just being the county seat, right? We have the jail, which can house up to 200 people. You know, with that, the government center is the probation services, so we have a lot of traffic that way. We have the courthouse out there also, you know, which is 9th District, so that brings a lot of people from the surrounding areas here. We have the main hub for social services in Crookston, which, you know, brings in some traffic that way as far as HUD housing and anything else that might be related. We have a mental health facility in Crookston. A lot of these are benefits, right? But they also sometimes bring business associated with them. A hospital, again, a great resource for Crookston, but with that, you know, there's increased call loads for responding for security, helping with transports, mental health, however that might look with the hospital. You know, we have a homeless shelter, again, that generates some business for us, significant amount each year. You know, we do have a large rental population in the city of Crookston, I think, compared, I shouldn't say that compared to other cities, I really haven't compared that to a lot of other cities, but it is significantly higher. You know, when you look at the ratio of the households in Crookston, you know, almost a third of those are rental properties. You have the Highway 2 corridor coming through Crookston again. It's surprising for, you know, we're a smaller town, but, you know, I still say we're a smaller town. But even working patrol and you ask our officers, you know, stopping cars during the day, it's surprising how often you don't stop local residents. You know, you stop a lot of people from other states, from Canada, and just passing through because of work, you know, and whether that generates some other crime and everything associated with that. And I think also just being part of the Grand Forks Metro also brings some more traffic and some population over this way, so.
And we are part of the 2 longest highway systems in the United States.
Yeah, I was just gonna say
They
that.
crisscross in Crookston.
You know,
75.
generating
There's
from
a lot of traffic.
From here to
It's not
Duluth, and
residential.
with that Highway 2 corridor, you know, you do have some drug influx of people moving in narcotics in and out of this city and everywhere else. So, I mean, those, again, those are kind of the main things that we kind of put together, feeling like, again, why? I don't know that, you know, it's, each city has their own unique, but I think we're kind of unique in that we have the courthouse and different things like that.
So those are the justifications for 2 officers.
Yeah.
And I would welcome another conversation any other time if you guys would like me to put any more statistics on a PowerPoint or however that would look. I'd be happy to further discuss any of these in the future.
The only thing that I would add as far as on the expense side, if there's anywhere that, as you go through them, I mean, I'm not looking at anything in particular, but if there's anything that we can do to cut any expenses anywhere, which I'm sure you've already looked, I mean,
So as you kind of go through here and you'll see, we'll buzz through the rest here. This will go really quick, as you'll see on my capital improvement expenditures and everything. The other line item I wanted to note is if you look at 0209 guns, belts, holsters, about midway down this page, you'll see typically we have budgeted $6,500 for that. I put 9,500 in there, but what I have done is each year in our capital improvements, we have budgeted an additional $3,000 for officer equipment. And what I did is I just moved that money from the capital improvement to that line item, just because it's an annual expenditure for us. So I removed it from capital improvements and put it in there. So it technically didn't increase our budget. I just moved those funds into that line item. Gas, oil, we did the 40% standard. That increased by $10,000 for next year. Tire replacement, we had been budgeting $2,500 for that. I did increase that to $5,000. You know, I've been buying tires for the city, for the police department for almost the last 10 years. And again, like everything else, the pursuit rated tires are becoming more expensive. You know, everything's moving to all-wheel drive, as we all know. Where is more on the tires? The tires are harder to get. Sometimes they're not in stock, or when we order them, they're difficult to get. We buy them from state contract. We pay local vendors to install them for us. So we typically like to keep 1 or 2 sets in stock because of that. But just for the amount of cars that we run, at 2,500 is just not enough. In fact, I'd probably argue 5,000 isn't, but I think we can definitely make that work with the inventory and everything we have for next year. Last item on that page, dog pound expense. I think we've had some conversation, or Corky has brought that up also. We're currently in contract negotiations, or I shouldn't say contract, agreement. We're negotiating an agreement with them again. They have approached us in the last few months, and obviously they're bought out by a different entity, Scruffy Tails, and they are looking to increase not only their daily animal impound fees, but also their monthly rent. So currently we pay $250 a month for rent. They're looking to increase that by $100 to $350. They're also currently, and Corky and I are actually tomorrow going to be furthering these conversations. They're looking to increase, currently we pay $4 a day for impounded animals. We charge the public $5 to at least recapture those funds. They're currently proposing $20 per day. So again, what I did is I audited the last 10 years. On average, we spend $6,000 a year. And out of that last 12 months that we audited, I went through and found the animals that we recovered, how many we've taken back, and how many that do not go back to the owner. And only about 42% of the animals that we impound are recovered by the owners, and those are typically dogs. Like cats, a lot of times aren't recovered. So kind of using that 42% as a baseline and the current numbers in the agreement that they're proposing, I feel pretty confident that we would have to increase that by about $4,000 to $10,000 for next year, which should cover those costs. I think I also did put in the permanent note, or in the note section, that could change. Obviously, if we can negotiate a better agreement, I will change that applicable to what we feel would be appropriate to cover those costs.
Is Scruffy Tail, are they like the local impound service for other cities as well?
I believe they just the Humane Society in Crookston. I can't say that for certain, but I
They
believe
get
it is
no
just.
money from the county whatsoever.
Right.
And there's no other cities? I
Marshall,
could've sworn-
Marshall,
I was gonna
Marshall
say,
County,
I
yes,
knew
you're
another
right.
city
Marshall County
just-
does use them. And I did,
No other cities that I'm aware of.
Besides Marshall? Because
I
that
think
just happened,
I think when
right?
they
That was
showed
just
their
recent.
budget sheet, I think they get a couple $1,000s a year from them.
Yeah, I was just curious.
So, so again, currently right now, again, just trying to do the audit over the last 12 months, I feel pretty comfortable about that. Utilities, you'll see an increase there, again, just adding for the average inflation rate. And then if you go down to buildings and structures, 520. And again, when I did my capital improvements for next year, just like Delane said, I really tried to cut and whittle it down as much as we absolutely can.
But also the recovery dollars aided with fixing the
Correct.
garage and that stuff that you guys voted for.
We're able
them
to kind of push off a lot, absolutely. So that vest replacement on line 1, on the capital improvement section, I'm sorry, I'm ahead of myself, excuse me. Building and structures, you'll see the $6,000 on that 520 line item that I put. I put in the capital improvement to add patrol lockers to our bathroom in the basement. We have a large bathroom that's currently vacant. A few years back, we replaced the flooring in there. There was some lockers in there. They were inadequate size. They basically weren't usable for the equipment and gear that we carry. And they were in pretty tough shape, so we did dispose of those a few years back. We have yet to replace them. Nathan went out, got some bids of just kind of some prefab lockers that we could put back in there that would be adequate for, helmets, gear, vest, et cetera. And we feel comfortable with that amount that we could put probably 10, maybe 12, but probably 10 lockers in that bathroom for patrol officers to have places for their gear. Currently, right now, their gear is in bags and just set on shelves in the garage, and it's not good. So, on the next line item down, motor vehicles, you'll see that we budgeted $65,000. That's the amount that when Paul was chief, we budgeted for many years. Breakdown of that is each year we budget $40,000 for a new squad car. We have typically been buying the Ford Explorers, they call them Ford Utilities. We've been able to purchase that within the $40,000. In years past, we have purchased Tahoes, I think, which would exceed that, but as a patrol vehicle, everybody's really happy and comfortable with that, I'll say Explorer that we've been purchasing. And the nice thing about that is going back to all Explorers, we're uniform, same key, same equipment, same muscle memory, same everything. The other $25,000 of that is, as we did last year, we put in for replacement of one of our detective vehicles. Last year, we budgeted $25,000 to replace a 2008 Impala. This year, we're budgeting to replace a 2010 Impala. Both those vehicles, the miles are lower in the 60 to 80 range. However, we have painted them once. They're rusting out. They're not working anymore. They're basically kind of falling apart on us. So that would be to replace vehicles that are now 12 to, as you can see last year, 18, 14 years old.
I've brought this up in the past and it just doesn't go anywhere. And I don't know for what reason. Is why don't we just look at leasing? I'd like to see a study or something, because I feel we could save some money over the years. Plus, you're driving newer vehicles all the time. And then the expense of them goes back to the warranty of it. And then, you know, once the warranty runs out, we turn it and get another lease vehicle.
Darren actually did do a study on lease vehicles that he could share with you, that he had done.
We did reach out to a leasing company, and yeah, we have done the studies. And originally I was thinking it would work well for the police department, which I think it still possibly could. A lot of their parameters, we fall within those parameters as far as miles on vehicles, how long we keep cars. However, where it kind of came to a halt, as you said, and I know we've had some conversations about this before, Delane, if I could do it just for the 3-4 vehicles that we run, when I say that 3 or 4 vehicles are squad cars, we have about half a dozen squad cars and about 4 of those run almost every day, right? And so to replace those, however, the problem is they want to do 20 cars throughout the city. That's their base minimum they would like to get to. And obviously there's other companies, I only did this with one. But when we started looking at that, again, Ryan and Kathy and I, we sat in a meeting and then you start penciling that out. And again, for a city our size, 20 vehicles a year, I think could be maybe out of reach. Again, I haven't penciled it for 20.
Other types of stuff, right? I mean,
they'll do small, light trucks to cars. So we did ask that if they would do like a dump truck or something like that, and they don't do that larger vehicles. So, I mean, again, I'd be happy to further look at that. I know, I shouldn't say thankfully, but the last couple of years, I know some of those large lease companies that buy up to, 1 million cars a year or more, the big car companies weren't giving them cars because of that. They were selling them to individual municipalities and things like that. So we were very fortunate. We were able to get our squad car in a reasonable amount of time last year, and we have just received it back completely outfitted from last week. So that'll be going on the road soon. But I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I think, maybe each respective department could look at trying to make it work, but 20 overall, I'm not sure how
20
that
is a
looks.
lot, and
It is. Yeah, that's a lot of cars.
And then I also know that, I mean, what is the number of miles a squad car puts on a year?
So for us right now, we're currently on a 4-year rotation. That number is anywhere from 90 to 115,000 miles.
Every 4 years, or?
Correct, every 4 years. And you have your 3-year 36,000 mile warranty up front. That usually lasts us about a year. Then we have, the 5-year 50,000 mile drivetrain. We do have one hybrid that's 10-year 100,000. So that really saves us on drivetrain warranty as far as any pieces.
So a lot of leases, the mileage is what you're fighting against.
Correct. And they really want them, under that 100,000 mark, if they can get those.
Okay.
We still do have a lot of warranty work with our vehicles that we have. 100,000 miles on a squad car, I'd argue, is equivalent to probably double that on any other vehicle. Just from on the wear and tear, start, stop brakes, right? We're always replacing tires, brakes, batteries. But, idle time, there's a significant amount of idle time on those cars. So after 4 years, I know maybe it doesn't sound like that much, but they're almost junk after 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I was thinking in my mind that, getting a lease, because you get a newer vehicle, but yeah.
And fortunate, again, we are of the size where, we don't have a fleet of, even 20 squad cars. We run, I'll say 6 black and whites, and then we have some other investigator vehicles. And some of those black and whites, SRO car, and we have a spare squad, obviously, for when cars go down. But our rotation, we're able to keep a healthy rotation, I think, which is fairly affordable, at that 4-year mark, even where I'm not sure we'll be money ahead by leasing.
Do you know of any police departments out there that do lease?
There's several.
And they're large, right? Because
So Polk County does. And that's Polk County Sheriff's, or Polk County does, Polk County. And
they do.
The sheriff's office, social services, everything, and it's the same thing. And I spoke with their fleet manager a couple years ago when I did this study. They buy 6 to 8 squad cars a year. They have a staff of like 35 deputies, which each deputy gets their own squad car, right? So they're buying a lot of cars. Plus social services has about a dozen cars they run. The Polk County Highway Department. So I mean, for them to meet a 20 car demand is very easy.
I see.
And some of the other cities, I still get some emails from this individual, but they're larger cities,
It would be nice if we could somehow share Polk County and City of Crookston as far as going through the whatever agency it is.
The leasing
to
program.
help meet the demand.
Yeah.
To touch on his getting availability, I know the county is outfitting cars that they didn't want to order. because the availability of the Ford
They
Interceptor.
couldn't get the cars they
couldn't
wanted.
get the cars they wanted, so they're paying to outfit actually Chevy Traverses for a squad car versus the Ford Utilities, because Ford just won't give them to them, to the company overall.
All right.
And that's where, and we'll quit talking about it, sorry to keep talking, but that's where it kind of benefits like some county agencies, you know, they'll put upwards of 150 to 200,000 miles on a squad car and say 4 or 5 years, so them being able to get rid of that car prior to 100,000 is very advantageous for them, where for us, we're kind of already on that rotation, so.
All right.
And then lastly, last item I have is other equipment. You can see, that's budgeted at 19,000 and how we come up with that number. So if you're looking at the capital improvements page for 2023, line number 1, vest replacement. I put a note there, create line item expenditure for that. So I spoke with Ryan about it. He was in agreement with that. Again, every year we budget $3,900 again to replace ballistic vests. I just suggested that we put it in as a regular line item expenditure and take it out of capital improvements. So that's what I'm looking to do with that money. And then the other portion of that, let me just scroll to that. Excuse me. Again, I took the $3,000 out of the top section there. I'm sorry, there was another $3,000 added in that section for new officer equipment. Like I told you earlier, I moved that to guns, belts, and holsters, line item 0209. And the remaining amount, approximately $15,000, that is the cost to upfit or equip our squad cars with the equipment that they need, the consoles, the partitions, radars, etc. So, and we repurpose as much equipment as we can, but we're kind of stuck in a transition year. You know, we've had Explorers in the past, like they always do every 3-4 years, they change the body styles, and unfortunately, the way that they built the doghouse, the center kind of island in the squads it's deeper than the old one, so a lot of our equipment wouldn't work. We had to get different consoles, different siren controllers that weren't as deep to fit in those units. You know, we always replace in-car cameras or repurpose in-car cameras, radars, radios, you know, your police radios and things like that. After next year, we should hopefully again have a unified squad with the same fleet, with the same style vehicles. I'm hoping I can reduce that by about $5,000. But next year will be what I call again a complete build, where we are completely upfitting that car. This year it actually cost closer to $17,000. But some of the equipment that we had to purchase this year we'll be able to repurpose for the following year, so we'll have a little bit of savings there. That is how we came up with those two numbers together there. So happy to discuss anything further. Again, I just touched on where there was some changes in some of the line items. You know, we really cut a lot of the fat out of the capital improvement budget. And if you do the math from last year's budget to this year's budget, again, by removing a lot of the capital improvement projects and everything in between, the increase is just $167,000 more than the year prior, which would basically, I'm only asking for 2 officers. I feel like the rest I can manage within the current levels or amounts that we did last year.
So, one question is the police department building. I mean, I was in there. I mean, what is the long-term plans? I mean, 10, 5, 10? I mean, is that something? How does it work within city government to look at getting a new police department building at some point in time? And I mean, does it have to be done through grants or?
Well, you can do it in any number of ways. You can try grants, you can try levy, you can try bonding.
Have a flood.
What's that? We can have a flood.
East side, and we have.
Isn't that, didn't you guys just recently do the tour of all of the city
The
buildings?
facility study has been done, it has not been reported.
Okay. So
So,
I'm
and you know-
assuming we might get some more information from that.
Sorry to interrupt.
But that certainly is a pertinent discussion, but it's not part of this
Right.
budget.
Yeah.
Okay. I just didn't know if something like that is too big of an item to be put on a 5-year
Yeah,
capital.
it's not, you're not gonna put it on the 5-year capital.
And I'll just last comment I'll make, you know, 10-ish years ago when Paul and I took over as administration, the plan on buildings at that time was to repair what we had. So that's kind of the direction we have gone for the last 9 years or so. We've tried to put in money every year to improve on our current building. So like Corky said, to change that direction and go new would be pretty substantial. Something we could talk about, but kind of a big,
Yeah, it's certainly relevant, but it's,
Yeah.
that's discussion in and of itself.
I would like to see the report, because I think that could really
And I did
decide the
speak with
direction.
the facilities chief last Friday, and because I called him and said, where are we on this? He said, we'd like to get it to you by the end of July, and I said, really, that's not soon enough. And he said, well, I said, we need it much more quickly because we're in budgeting. So he said he'd speak with the fellow who conducted it and is writing it. Yeah, I think our experience has been with these reports, with these studies, they want to put them off. Ryan will attest to this too. We even actually did that with our auditor. Made a call and said, where is it? We need it. No, that's not soon enough. Would you please understand our need? And they've been responsive, I believe.
yes.
Okay.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. We are adjourned.